ba lahat?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you joining us today. So it's now the second day of August 2021. Time flies so fast. And we're now on the last day of our Doing Ethnography Seminar Workshop. So we want to welcome you all, our resource speakers for the last day of our webinar workshop, our dear participants. So just a few reminders po before we start our webinar this morning. Please be informed that we are being recorded and streaming during the entirety of this virtual event. You may also opt to turn off your video so you quickly. And we will be collating questions and raise it during the Q&A part as part of our webinar. And we also want to remind our participants to make sure that you have registered using your correct email address. Okay, so with this, I guess we're now ready to start our program for this morning. So friends, to officially open this webinar, may I now call on the Director of the Extension Services Division of Camarines Norte State College, Dr. Girly H. Nabal, for the welcome remarks.
To our college president, Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz, vice presidents, deans and campus directors, future fellow ethnographers, welcome to our last day of doing ethnography. Indeed, since day one, we have considered ourselves very lucky for being part of this very edifying activity, and we've got the chance to be mentored by erudite professionals and anthropologists. So keep on sticking around until the closing ceremony and be enriched with topics on ethics in ethnography and material culture. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naval. So with this, we will now proceed with the presentation of the profile of our resource persons for this morning. So our first resource person who will discuss this morning regarding ethics in ethnography is an anthropologist and a professor emeritus at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She is a senior lecturer of the UP College of Social Work and Community Development, and at the same time at the UP Center for International Studies. She has done research on Ifugao culture and oral discourses, specifically on the Alim since 1968. So friends, we have Ma'am Rosario, Del Rosario, to discuss on ethics in ethnography. Then after this is the last module regarding material culture. So we have our resource persons for this module. So we have Sir Skilty Labastilla. He is an
Dr.
instructor at...
Jocelyn.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Jocelyn. There are four resource speakers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. So our next resource speakers is resource speaker is an instructor at Ateneo de Manila University's Department of Interdisciplinary Studies and Research Associate at the Institute of Philippine Culture. Since 2001, he has been involved in policy research on governance, children and youth, gender and masculinities, and housing and informal settlements. So, friends, that also welcome Sir Skilty Labastilla. Next is Ma'am Maria Mangahas, an ex-officio Aghamtao editor-in-chief. She is a professor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Department of Anthropology. Her fieldwork has been on coastal and small-scale fishing communities in Batanes and Samal Island. She has also investigated the phenomenon of digitized scandals and media piracy, as well as the history of Philippine anthropology. She was the president of UGAT in 2014 to 2017. So we have Ma'am Maria Mangahas. Next is Sir Jessie Varquez, who is an ex-officio executive UGAT director. Sir Jessie is a faculty member at the Behavioral Sciences Department of the De La Salle University in Manila. His research broadly explores human-environment relations and livelihood strategies. Currently, he is studying human-dried fish relations and while pursuing graduate studies at the University of Manitoba in Canada. He has been involved in UGAT since 2009. We also have Ma'am Amelia Rohel Rara as our resource speaker for this morning. Her interest in anthropology was born out of early friendship with Lawrence Wilson, an American anthropologist who first discovered the presence of Pleistocene remains of elephant.
Doc Jocelyn,
Yes, ma'am.
si Doc Ami Rara will go this afternoon.
So this afternoon na lang, ma'am.
Okay,
So,
you will
so
introduce her this afternoon.
Okay, ma'am. So later we will introduce our resource person who will discuss regarding material culture. Okay, so I guess we're now ready to listen to our resource persons for this morning. So thank you, ma'am, and welcome to our resource persons.
Uh, Maria, Rosario, and Skilty and Jessie, please come in and start the discussion. Thank you.
Magandang umaga po ulit sa lahat. I think ako yung na-designate na tagapagpadaloy for this session. So thank you to the person who introduced us earlier. And again, thank you for those who are still here since day one. And I hope marami tayong natututunan so far. And this module is about ethics, and we decided to have many speakers because this can be approached in also multiple ways. So we have again Dr. Mangahas, Dr. Sario Del Rosario, and De Santos, and Professor Skilty and Dr. Guieb. And since Dr. Sario is one of our elders, Professor Emeritus na rin siya sa UP, I think she's having difficulty entering Zoom. So while waiting for her, let's have Dr. Mangahas first to introduce us. Ano ba yung laman ng ethics module na ito? Ma'am Maria?
Okay, well, we thought that we could start from, ideally from questions or experiences of everybody, but I didn't receive any advance points. So in anyway, we thought of 4 topics. Well, ethics in general is about values, guidelines or standards, and why are you even doing ethnography? You could go back to that. The topics we thought of are, number 1, approaching the community. Maybe Jessie, you can flash them, or that Rosario would have been the one to discuss. And we have ethics in participant observation, which Guieb is going to share on. And we have on community-based, approaches. And I forgot the complete title. What's the title, Jessie? Which is for Skilty.
Skilty would have ethical issues in community-based, participatory, and action-oriented forms of research. So it's quite a mouthful.
And then myself on disseminating research findings. Since Rosario is not here, what should we do? I did have a chat with her before, and then I had encoded what she said, which she said she wanted to use, but she was going to expand on it pa daw. If you want, I can share it. Would you like that? Or shall we just wait for her to? Kaso lang her topic is the beginning topic.
Oh, we can wait for her na lang siguro, ma'am, baka she prepared something. And meanwhile, our participants can think about the questions. I'm trying to pull it out para ma-share ko.
Okay, but I can share some of her questions. How should you approach the community? What feelings should you have in dealing with the community? How to behave? Language, experience. Have you done this before? Then she said, if you haven't, imagine going to the field. What is your field? Say it. What issues might you encounter? And she mentions aspects like gender, civil status, having shared life experiences, class, as things that might come into your and approaching the field. Also ethnicity. She also wants to emphasize the entry point or the person who can assist and introduce you and open doors for you. And her other questions are, why are you there? What is your motive? So reflect on it. Is it just like a touristic motive, or do you have a thesis to write, or you have a connection with the field, like a friend, or you know someone? Those are some questions. Yun. I won't read the rest, but those are some of our questions. So if the audience already have thoughts along those lines, they can also maybe begin to write them in the chat box if they want. Is Rosario there? Not yet.
I'm not sure, but I'm trying to share the screen of this module that we prepared. So sa mga participants po natin, I'm sure I have listened to the previous modules as well, trying to observe what's happening. And many of our participants have conducted social research before. So I'm sure they have encountered ethical questions similar to those that was raised by Ma'am Maria earlier. Was that Sario's question now?
Yeah, those are Rosario's parang prefatory questions.
Okay. Sige, I hope nag-breakfast na yung participants natin and they have the energy to think about the questions. So for our participants, please take a look at the shared screen, and you don't necessarily think of the questions in terms of these categories, no, yung approaching the community, but perhaps the general task would be to think of questions related to ethics as you have encountered so far in your research.
Because we also wanted this to be more of a Q&A, so there's more exchange between us and the participants. But if meanwhile, maybe we can just go next to Ellie. Would that be a good idea?
Yes, if Sir Ellie is ready. Pero laging handa yan si Sir Ellie. Sir Ellie?
Okay, good morning. Natakot naman ako doon sa laging handa. Yeah, good morning to everyone. Good morning, Joe. Good morning to Guieb. Good morning to all the participants. Now, this is going to, the idea here is that it's supposed to be more of a question and answer type, more of a dialogue. No? Perhaps what we need right now is to provide some triggers, no? on how we can start the dialogue. No? And I've been tasked to provide triggers on, let's say, in understanding ethics while we are already in the field, no? Ethics, and in particular, participant observation. It covers a wide range of topics, so ang hirap-hirap talagang mag-focus. So I have a lecture here, but I won't go throughout the lecture. I'll just choose some slides, no? Na pwede nating pansinin. But again, I can't cover everything, no? In spite of that one aspect, no, of ethnography and dami-daming issues dyan. And that's the reason why we would like to encourage our participants to think of some issues, theoretical o hindi pa nagaganap, or yung nagbibuild pa lang ng scenario, or yung naganap na. No? And we encourage candor here. No? Huwag kayong matakot. Nagkamali kami, meron pala kayong violation. Na? We learn from those. And those are the issues as well that have made us aware more of our obligations to communities and even obligations to ourselves. No? Sige, I can share this. Mga ilang minutes? 5 minutes? 5 to 10? 5 minutes? Sige, just a few triggers here. No? And then please do let me know if I'm over my time, no? Jessie. No? Bibilisan naman natin to. No? How do I share this? How do I share this? Can I share this now?
Let's make Sir Ellie co-host, I think.
Yeah, I think po pwede na. No? Okay, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Bibilisan ko lang to. Maraming slides to, but I'll choose about 5 or 10. No? Okay. Is it okay that I put it this way so that I can jump to the number that I want to project here? No? Sige, pwede rin naman natin i-full. No? Okay. Now, I want to start our trigger here. No? Free, prior, and informed consent. Lagi natin itong narinig. Free, bukal sa loob. No? Napakahalaga na ang paghingi ng pahintulot ay bukal sa loob. No? Hindi ito pinilit. Prior, before, and I think Ma'am Sario will be discussing this point, and informed consent, I think, which covers all the phases of this research. No? Informed, ibig sabihin, hindi hangga't maaari, buo ang impormasyon na kung saan ay makapaggagawa ng isang matalinong at bukal sa loob na pagsang-ayon ng ating mga researchers. No? Okay, and I want to focus on several risks. No? Ito ang lagi nating dapat isaalang-alang, isa sa napakaraming dapat isaalang-alang. No? There are several risks: physical, emotional risks, financial, biomedical, psychosocial, security, at yung binanggit nga ni Maria kanina na covered ng sinasabi ni Ma'am Sario, issues of ethnicities, gender, down the line. These are all risks. No? At bawat risk may kanya-kanyang mga implications on how we conduct our research while in the field. No? Marami ito, we can cover everything. Again, just trigger so that we can have a lot more discussion on this. No? Okay. Meron akong gustong i-emphasize sa ating discussion. No? One of the major ethical issue is the risk by those doing the study on those that are being studied. So dalawang actors dito, no? Those being studied and those doing the study. And I want to focus on the risk on those that are being studied. In quotes are being studied. Ang pangit pakinggan ng pinag-aaralan sila. No? But let's put it that way for now. No? The risk for those being studied by those doing the study. And then, mahalagang malaman muna natin some of the basic rights. No? Kasi dito minsan nag-aaway-away o nagkakagulo while already in the field. No? 1, 2, and 3, marami nang napag-usapan dito at maaari pa natin itong palalimin sa ating mga discussion mamaya. Full knowledge about all aspects of the research from funding, planning to validation. Ito, yung number 2, to be informed of all possible risks. And not only the risks, the potential consequences, no, of those risks. So, ibig sabihin, matinding planning ang kailangan mo before you go to the field. Pero while in the field, you must always be aware of all these risks. We can share with you a lot of experiences on this. No? Confidentiality of identity, if necessary or when necessary, not just in print, on print, audio, video, or any form of recording. Pinagpapaalam yan. No? Kahit nasa community ka na, kahit may naganap ng mga permits in the past. No? Okay. Now, dito ko gustong mag-focus number 5 and number 6. Of course, confidentiality of information related to confidentiality of identity. No? Ito, right to give no reply to any question without negative consequences on respondent. Okay, dapat nating tanggapin at kilalanin, no, na ang ating mga kausap sa field, nakakasalamuha, nakakakwentuhan, meron silang karapatan na huwag sumagot sa ating mga tanong nang walang negative consequences on respondent. We have to recognize that. Ayaw mong sumagot, susumbong kita sa barangay captain. Ayaw mong, hindi pwede yun. Ayaw mong sumagot, wala kang merienda. Okay? And we have to recognize that they do have that right. And when they exercise that right not to reply, that right must not have any corresponding negative consequences. Ito pa, number 6. Kahit humingi na tayo ng consent beforehand, our respondents, our informants, or our co-field workers, let's call them co-field workers, they have a right to withdraw from any phase of the research, again, without any negative consequences on the respondent. Kasi habang nagaganap yung fieldwork, minsan nakikilala din lang kanilang mga sarili. No? At habang nakikilala ang kanilang mga sarili at mga pananaw sa nagaganap sa kanilang community based on the questions that we prompt them to answer, no? Bigla silang nagiging uncomfortable, no? And that's normal, and we have to recognize that. If they have that feeling that they are threatened because so much information is being given to us as researchers, they can withdraw from any phase of the research. Minsan nga, sabi ng mga estudyante ko, sir, kahit na naka-print na, yes, ready ka na pirmahan ng dean ang iyong thesis, no? They have that right up to the printing stage, actually, kung hanggang publication, no? Pero pag-usapan natin yan in detail, no? Dapat nating kilalanin ang mga rights nito. Dito nagsisimula kadalasan ang maraming mga away o sabihin nating samaan ng loob, no? Dapat din nating kilalanin, no, that they have this right to negotiate for rights to the research. Lagi na lang natin kasing tiningnan in the past, no, na ang mga respondents natin ay respondents, informants. But they have certain rights to the research, lalo na when it comes to publications and even awards, no? Dapat simulan na rin natin kilalanin na sa buong aspekto ng research, meron silang karapatang mag-negotiate ng kung ano pa mang pwedeng ethical na mga karapatan nila na pwedeng i-negotiate sa atin. Marami yan. At nade-develop yung iba habang tumatagal. Nakikilala yung iba habang tumatagal. Now, number 8, nagaganap ito sa participant observation at lagi ko itong ine-emphasize din. No? Yes, consent is done beforehand. But now, there is a growing demand among participants, no? The right to ask for a renewal of consent for each phase of the research. Nag-interview ka, isusulat mo, muli ka mag-i-interview for each phase of the research hanggat maaari. Humingi ka ng consent sa kanila. And you have to recognize that they do have that right to ask for a renewal of consent. Okay? Hindi na sapat yung unang consent. Dumarating na ang punto na for almost every phase of the research, there is a renewal of consent. Gusto pa po ba ninyo magpatuloy? Bakit? Gusto pa po ba ninyong huwag magpatuloy? Ayaw nyo po bang magpatuloy? Bakit po? No? Baka kasi nga, meron ng mga nakikitang risk sila nang hindi natin nakikita. No? Okay? So, may mga implications ito. Napakaraming implications. Hindi ko alam kung saan ako tatalon ulit. No? Pero, ang gusto kong tingnan ngayon is, meron pang, siguro dyan na lang muna, and then later on, we can proceed from here. Ang dami pang pwedeng sabihin, pero magbibigay muna ako ng triggers, and then perhaps some points in this presentation, I can show them to you when we discuss them in our question and answer. But for now, I want to focus on those basic rights, no? That we have to recognize while we are doing our fieldwork in the conduct of our research, no? While doing participant observation. So, habang ino-obserbahan natin sila, habang nagpa-participate tayo sa kanilang mga trabaho, ginagawa sa community, hindi sila nawawalan ng mga karapatan in relation to our rights as researchers. Later on, siguro yung rights natin as researchers. Kasi talagang mataas ang vulnerability ng mga napag-aaralan. Siguro isang aspect na lang, no? They always feel during the research that there is something like a shortchanging, no? Parang feeling of betrayal, no? Feeling nila lagi silang nabibetray ng ating mga researchers. And that feeling is valid. Bakit nagaganap ang feeling na yon? Siguro dahil may mga bagay na hindi sapat ang pag-open up natin sa kanila. Okay? One major aspect of that is the right to all the information that they need to know while we are conducting the research. Not only before we conduct the research, but also while we are conducting the research. For instance, our preliminary understanding of the situation in which they are situated. Okay. Sa akin, napakahalaga lagi na sinasabi ko, I think I may disagree with your points here. Okay? Hindi ako nagsasabi na, hindi yung, kunyari objective ako, no? And then pagdating ng research, tinitira ko pala sila dahil ang daming practices na unethical, ang daming practices na down the line. Okay? Ako, right, while doing the research, nilalatag ko kaagad ang aking mga preliminary, sinasabi ko preliminary agreements and disagreements. No? So it's always a question of negotiating analysis before even going to the validation part. No? Even during the field work, nagsisimula pa lang, meron ka ng mga tentative. Dapat klaro naman tentative yan or provisional. So in that, what I mean here is that the honesty, yung candor, yung katapatan ay bukas na bukas. Iniiwasan kong magtago ng mga bagay-bagay na lahat ng may kinalaman sa kanila, kahit sarili kong panimulang pananaw hinggil sa analysis ng mga phenomenon na pinag-aaralan sa fieldwork. Bago pa ang totoong validation. Sa ganong aspect, we establish trust. Of course, may risk involved din na pwede kang paalisin. And that happens. You have to recognize that may karapatan silang paalisin ka. Okay? Wala kang karapatan mag-insist na dito ako, hindi ako aalis. No? Pinili nyo na ako. Wala nang touch move. Hindi pa pwedeng gano'n. No? Tanggapin mo rin na pwede ka nilang paalisin anytime they want. Marami pang pag-uusapan. But these are the triggers. No? One of the few triggers when you do fieldwork, doing participant observation. Pero lahat kasi yan, bumabagsak sa mga usaping ito. Right to negotiate for rights in the research, right to renew consent, right to be transparent about what we're doing, complete transparency even on the level of analysis. So yun lang muna siguro ang triggers. Yan pa lang, marami na tayong pag-uusapan. Marami na tayong pwedeng pagtalunan. I guess that's it for now. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Sir Eli. Ako, na-trigger na talaga ako. No? Marami kang binitawang mga keywords na, and I hope our participants are already formulating questions in their mind. So yung mga keywords natin, yung risk, confidentiality, consent, no? And then ethics in all phases of research, which is very important. Kung i-connect kasi natin sa mga earlier na mga modules, malamang nakita natin na yung previous anthropological research, in today's standards, pwedeng sabihin unethical, no? Kasi walang, hindi dumaan sa mga ganitong proseso right now. So, siguro isa sa mga, may context, yes.
May temporal,
colonial context, halimbawa yung shinare namin ni Mama Maria. So, kumbaga, marami ring dapat i-consider right now, aside from thinking about research questions. One of the most important aspects din ng research in the 21st century is yung ethical questions. No? Especially, meron din siyang legal, hindi pa masyado nababanggit pero yung legal implications niya. Right now, we're just thinking about conceptual and probably institutional na mga I'm not sure sa CNSC if meron ng ethics board or similar to that kind of body or committee. Alright, sige. So sa ngayon po, buksan natin yung talakayan sa sino mang merong gustong itanong tungkol sa mga konsepto, no, or mga considerations or triggers na nabanggit ni Dr. Eli. Sa inyo pong sariling karanasan, meron ba kayong risk na encounter or sa tanong ng confidentiality or sa aspect ng consent, meron bang mga informants ninyo na in the face of your research biglang ayaw na namin mag-participate, and how did you deal with it? May tanong din about authorship kanina. No? Madalas kasi ang thinking natin about research is yung data mining, no? Yung informant lang sila, source of information. But as many anthropologists would ask us, no? Halimbawa may kakatok sa bahay ninyo, sasabing ethnographers po kami, gusto namin kayong pag-aralan. Parang we put ourselves into their shoes. Ano yung magiging feeling din nila kapag may ganong klaseng approach sa kanila? Sige po, I'll give a few seconds para magnilay-nilay about these key points na raised ni Sir Eli.
Habang nag-iisip sila, can I share some personal experiences?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Baka habang nag-iisip sila, no? Makapag-trigger ulit. Ang dami-dami natin. Yung iba rito, actually this based, yung sinabi ko kanina, based on 2 articles, no? By anthropologists themselves, no? O in a foreigner, later on I'll show you my sources. No? And of course, these are all based on practices. No, gusto kong, for instance, in my case, no, when I was doing my field work for my PhD, no, on one island, Batasan, no, this is a highly organized community. No? Pagod na sila sa napakaraming researchers na nagpupunta sa kanila. Okay, and considering that I've spent 2 years for my preliminary fieldwork in the area, and then during my research proper, I think on my 11th month in the research area, no, meron yatang isang researcher not from our group na nag-trigger ng something hindi maganda sa community, no? And then nagkaroon ng meeting yung barangay na magdedesisyon lahat na, sige, nagkakagulo tayo rito, paalisin na natin lahat ng mga researchers na nagpupunta rito. Okay? Then one of my research assistants who was in that meeting rushed to my place. No? Eli, palalayasin na raw kayo. Wow, nasa 11th month na ako. 6 months na lang or 7 months na lang matatapos na yung fieldwork ko. No? 1.5 years. Ano? Wow, nasa kalagitnaan. Pero nasa utak ko talaga yung klaro sa akin yun. I-report ko na lang sa university. Pag talagang pinaalis ako, kahit hindi ako ang cause, no? Pag pinaalis lahat ng researcher sa Islam yan, ready na ako sa consequences. No? At hindi ko sila pwedeng i-blame. Kahit wala kang ginawa, no? You can't blame them if the committee decides that we don't want researchers here anymore.
Anong ending nung story na yan, sir? Talaga
Actually,
umalis kayo?
hindi rin. No? Kinausap nila ibang mga researchers na pupunta sa lugar, at sinabi lang sa kanila yung yung hindi nila gustong ginawa ng mga researchers. Okay? Hindi ako na-invite doon. Hindi naman siguro dahil wala akong unethical practices. No? Baka meron din naman. No? Kaya nga lang, because there was more openness, I really made that my point. No? To maintain that openness in terms of methods, in terms of preliminary analysis. No? Noong una, natatakot ako magsabi ng disagreement with them. Pero nung nagsisimula kami sa mga maliliit na disagreements, mas lalong napapalalim ng talakayan. No? Pero again, may risk din yan. Yung iba hindi talaga tatanggap ng disagreement. No? Hindi ko naman po sinasabing mali kayo. Absolutely. Ang sinasabi ko, sa ganito pong pananaw na posibleng pinanggagalingan ng aking datos o pinanggagalingan ko sa framework na ginagamit ko, ay hindi po ganyan ang isang pagbasa. Pwede pong pagbasa ganito, no? So nag-iisip silang gano'n, no? So hindi nila kinakailang maghintay ng validation workshop. Sabi ko, again, tentative po ito, panimula, pero as early as now, ito po yung nakikita ko. In other words, tumutulong na rin sila sa interpretation. Kaya nga pumapasok yung right to co-interpretation. Even in the biological sciences, actually din ko unang nakita, yung Fisher ay nagiging co-author. Sabi ko, wow, nakapag-publish sa super high-end na journal ang mangingisda. Samantalang ako, hirap na hirap pang mag-publish that time. No? Sabi ko, at sa biologist ko pa nakita yung practice na yun. Sabi ko, dapat anthropologist ang nangunguna sa... Of course, ginagawa yun na maraming afro. Pero sabi ko, parang sa practice ko, hindi ko pa ginagawa. Dating ang point, the authors, we researchers, no, will only be one among co-authors of the project that we are facilitating.
Para lang may connect, sir, yung previous module, baka part yan ng sinasabing decolonizing, no? Yung previous mode of research kasi may researcher pupunta, mag-extract ng data, mag-gather ng data, tapos i-report, pero siya yung may sole authorship. No? Pero ngayon, marami sa mga publications, hindi lang within social sciences, as you pointed out, but even beyond social sciences, that are putting local community members to the authorship lineup. No? I don't know if may incentive sila doon, pero yung mga mangingisda na yon. Pero sa university setup kasi, klaro na may incentive yung mga academics. Pero sa context na yon. Para rin ma-relate, sir, habang nag-iisip yung mga participants natin ng tanong sa earlier na module, ano pong ethical consideration when it comes to visuals, no? Photos, videos, in doing fieldwork? Kasi ako personally, may nakikita akong mga kaibigan na nag-fieldwork, tapos nag-share sa social media nila ng mga pictures ng field. No? Sometimes may mga bata, may mga real informants. Ano pong mga ethical considerations doon?
Okay, iba't ibang sitwasyon, no? I really want to make this clear. There's no standard. There are general, there are, I would say, universal, but there are unique considerations as well. No? Ako, ang lagi kong practice, you always ask permission before taking any picture. Okay, video recording down the line, audio recording, video, ganun. Okay, and then once that is done, another permit yung sa hindi kasi automatic that you were given consent to take photo, meron ka na kaagad permit to distribute that photo. Magkaiba yun, no? Hatiin natin yung proseso, no? Parang ganito yan sa kwento, even in our kwentuhan with our respondents, hindi porke ikinwento na sa'yo for your research ang bagay nito, may karapatan ka kaagad na isulat sa research mo. Those are two different things. Baka sinabi niya sa'yo for the benefit of that discussion, but not necessarily for research yet. Kaya nga minsan, oops, ang ganda ng sinabi mo, can I include that in my research? Even in an interview set up already, can I include that in my research and identify you as my source? Then identification, either anonymous or hindi. No? So basically that's it. So nagkuha ka ng picture, not necessarily for distribution, ipagpapaala mo pa rin yun. No? Pwede ko po ba itong ilagay sa Facebook? Pwede ko po ba itong i-post sa ating website down the line? Hindi automatic yun. No? Generally, hindi na natin pinagpapaalam yun. Pero just to be safe, what if ayaw niya palang ipakita ang mukha niya na taga-isla siya, no? Or doon siya nakatira for reasons we don't know yet. No? At kahit na walang dapat itago, karapatan nilang hindi maging ibulgar ang mukha nila. No? And even their sound recording, hindi automatic na ni-record natin, may karapatan tayong i-distribute yung sound na yon sa iba't ibang platforms. No? O iparinig yung interview sa ating, even to our supervisor, kung kakailanganin, hindi porke supervisor tayo, may karapatan tayong malaman lahat ng ginawa ng ating mga estudyante sa research. We want that right as well, but then the relationship established between the researcher and the community. No? So may mga ganitong bagay. Maraming dangers, maraming risk, kaya nga lang, I always go for that double safety. Lagi akong dalawang susi lagi para nakakatiyak. No? Sabi, ang kulit-kulit mo, pinayagan na kita. No, naniniguro lang po. Mahirap nang mag-assume na ganun nga po ang ating pinatutunguhan. No?
And consent is not necessarily written, sir, no? Pwedeng verbal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Doc Maria, may gusto po kayong i-share?
Maria, you are mute.
Actually, Jessie just said it. I was going to say na hindi lahat, consent is not a document. Consent is actually a relationship of trust between yourself and the people you're dealing with, so that you know that they really are. One way to look at your data is it's actually a gift. Parang pinagkalob sa inyo. Let's say it's a story na kinuwento sa inyo, or you were given the chance to observe something. It's actually something given to you. So you can treat it as something that you're accepting as a human being, as a person, na yung pinangangalagaan mo ay yung relationship ninyong dalawa. And so how you treat the gift, how you use that data is what it's all about. So hindi mo siya dapat itatapon sa basurahan or ipapakita sa lahat in a not nice way. Somehow, there's also that expectation that your representation of the people's lives will somehow not also be parang di mo pwedeng bastusin, di mo pwedeng, ganon. All the normal decency that you can expect should be contained in what you will do with your data. So, may question kasi nakita ko sa chat box about the most convincing approach for participants to give their consent. I think you need to reflect on what question. Parang the question itself has a problem because it's not really about convincing them to give their consent, but more of earning their trust so that it's a gift that they really. I think that's the best way to see it. It's something that they just gave you. Sometimes even without you're directly asking for it, because that's the nature of the relationship also with informants. They might inform you kasi they think, ay dapat alam mo din to. Kahit hindi mo pa hiningi, sinabihan ka dahil they come to share your research goals. They think it's a worthwhile project. So actually, one of the first things you must establish is that the topic is something people feel is a good topic, and it should be pursued. So they actually are not really convinced, but they are actually part of your parang part of your project because they are interested in the result. They think it is worth doing. Yeah.
Yeah, maganda yung idea yun, no? Trust is basic, no? You really have to establish that trust. And siguro that's the advantage of doing ethnography for a longer period than the shorter types of ethnography, no? Yung minsan the first month, the first 2 months, no? Or even just the first few weeks. It's more about establishing the trust, the rapport, na pwede kanilang pagkatiwalaan. At pwede rin silang magtiwala na maging bahagi ng iyong research. Yeah.
I lost my connection. Sorry.
Okay,
So, si Ma'am Jo.
I raised my hand. In terms ng confidentiality of data, even sa supervisor, no. So this would be the policy of the University of Canterbury. We were told, no, clear cut, meaning yung lahat ng mga mga postgrad students, that only the researcher would have access to the names, no, ng lahat ng mga in-interview mo. Now, if there is any question about any of your research or any of your respondents, you will be required to show it to your supervisor. Yung supervisor mo, PT. But only when there are questions, no, from the ethics committee. So ibig sabihin, even your supervisor does not see kung sino yung mga in-interview, yung mga tunay na mga pangalan nila. And I also had a very, very interesting experience regarding yung biglang binawi yung parang binawi pero hindi ko sure kung binawi o hindi. Pero hindi ko na ginamit yung data kasi nga ganun yung nangyari, no. So ganito yung pangyayari. My flatmate kasi in Christchurch, New Zealand, is a Kiwi, no. Talagang siya, from Dutch origin, no, or Dutch origin New Zealander. But anyway, she's a nurse and she's working in the hospital, and there was a Filipino nurse who she was close to. And then of course, sa kwentuhan nilang dalawa, I have a Filipino flatmate, siguro na ikwento niya, she's doing research on the Filipino diaspora here in New Zealand. So itong nurse na kaibigan niya, nag-volunteer to be one of my informants. Okay, so ito yung kwento. Sabi niya, hey, sige, so and so is willing to be interviewed by you. Here is her address. So ako naman, okay, I can interview her. So sa yun ang unang kasi sa Christchurch, nag-uumpisa pa lang ako ng mga interviews. And then she was quite okay sa first interview. Then later on, she called me kasi binigay ko sa kanya yung cellphone ko. Of course, lahat ito may informed consent. Yung mga may pinirmahan siya doon sa interview niya. May oral pa siya, may verbal consent pa siya doon sa interview na are you willing to be interviewed doon sa tape, no? Anyway, she calls me from my cell phone and tells me that she has other friends from the Northern Island. We are talking about the Northern Island of New Zealand, which is Auckland, Wellington, nandun yung mga lugar na mga major cities din. So I interviewed all of them, mga tatlo na, and they're all in quotation mark New Zealand brides. They married New Zealanders. But later on, when I was, so nagtatranscribe na ako later on, when I was in my office, my supervisor called me. Sabi niya, somebody called the department, telling the department that I am not qualified to receive the University of Canterbury scholarship and asked to talk to him, no? So anyway, kasi yun nga, di ba, sa ethics, you have to introduce yourself. You have to tell them what you're up, and I'm studying at the University of Canterbury. I received this University of Canterbury award, blah blah. Okay. So, tumawag ngayon yung Pilipina. This is Filipina, in quotation mark, New Zealand bride. And then reporting me that I probably have violated some rules of the university in terms of the application sa University of Canterbury scholarship because I'm a Filipino, no? Kasi yung University of Canterbury scholarship kasi is open to everyone in New Zealand, no? This is different from the NZA scholarship na ina-apply from your country of origin. So all the applicants dito sa University of Canterbury, you will be competing with the Kiwis, you will be competing with all the international students. So yun yung nakuha ko. Anyway, to make the story short, my supervisor told her that all accepted postgrad students of the University of Canterbury can actually apply to the university for the University of Canterbury scholarship. So bigla siyang nag-stop, no? So, yung nakuha kong data sa kanilang magkakaibigan, isinegregate ko na kaagad, no? And even when they did not or she did not give me any communication in terms of withdrawal, ethically, I should not be putting in her interview. Kasi nga, may konting bias na yon. Kasi medyo nagulat din ako. But anyway, this is according to Rosaldo. At tama siya, no? Our informants have the right to interrogate our politics. And since he didn't like me, siguro, and I'm even wondering why, kasi na-interview ko siya, tapos biglang siya ang tumawag sa akin, na-interview din yung mga kaibigan niya. So, I'm wondering, kasi it's a very, very fractious community ng mga Pilipino sa Christchurch, no? May kanya-kanya silang alliances. Okay, so, pag nakita ka nilang kausap mo yung ganito, hindi na sila magta-trust sa'yo kasi kaaway nila yung kausap mo eh. Ay tayong mga researcher, we want to talk to everyone. Hindi nila type yun. Gusto nila, yung side lang nila yung pakikinggan mo. So, I was trying to figure out na sino kayo yung nakausap ko, na nakita niya kausap ko na hindi niya gusto. Then I realized totoo yun na meron niyang isa. And I went to one barbecue with all the Filipinos there as well, na alam kong hindi niya type, no? So ganun siguro yung istorya. But even then, she has a right to question my qualifications. May may karapatan sila. And I didn't take it as a negative thing. Each time there is a Filipino gathering, I would greet her because after all, she's one of the best friends of my flatmate. And then she comes to visit the flat and I was very civil and cordial. Yun lang po.
Dagdag ko doon, that's a very interesting no, in that sense, because we get a lot of insights from that experience, John. Siguro ang isang aspect din na dapat nating tingnan, although not yet covered by our initial discussion now, is that kung may vulnerability ang research upon ang mga respondents natin, marami ring vulnerabilities tayong mga researchers. Like in that case, political aspects is also one of our vulnerabilities, no? Dapat din nating tanggapin later on while we do the research na minsan yung vulnerabilities na yun may be tapped by those whom we are studying, no? So that's also one of those things that we need to consider. Understand our own vulnerabilities as well. Talaga may mga interviews dyan, minsan interview mo, kakausapin mo, na talagang, dahil lagi mo siyang kinakausap, hindi kita kakausapin. Let's say even on gender issues, no? Lalaki, babae, ako lalaki dito at ako pa ang ganitong may posisyon, babae kang nag-i-interview sa akin, may mga ganyang issues. No? Anong karapatan mo para mag-interview sa amin ng ganyan? May mga ganung bagay. And let us also be aware of those vulnerabilities. Kahit tayong mga researchers ay meron ding vulnerabilities. No? Gusto ko idagdag din sa sinabi ni Jo kanina.
Pinapaste ko lang sa chat mga relevant things na sinabi sa akin dati ni Rosario.
Yeah. Ang ganda na you can't just have your own agenda. No?
Ma'am Maria, ako ulit magtatanong. Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Kasi shy pa yung participants natin. In relation po dun sa first na point ni Ma'am Rosario na when you are there, you will get suggestions on how to proceed. Paano po kapag may rigidity yung academic institution in terms of demand sa research mo and the flexibility that is asked of us in field circumstances? May mga experience po ba kayong mga ganon?
Oh, yes.
Kindly share.
Kasi di ba you write a proposal, if it's, let's say it's for a thesis or a dissertation. So you write a proposal, tapos dinefend mo sa panel, and you're all set. But when you go to the field, like in my case, I went to Samad Island in Davao. Tapos somehow, kasi hindi pa ako married, yung category ko para sa kanila youth. So kahit na mas matanda, kasi mas matanda pa ako doon sa mga married, parang yung tingin nila sa akin, you are a young person. So what happened was, I was always with the young people. So I really actually have bigger insight into the youth culture nung panahon na yon. Kaysa sa fisheries na very male occupation. Kaya yung notes ko parang puwersado na nag-interview ako para magkaroon ako ng fisheries data. Pero yung participant observation ko, puro basketball games, mga sayawan, ganun. And so if I didn't have to still put out the original proposal, my dissertation would have been something very different. Kaya lang, because I had to, and it was a comparative study actually, may isa pa akong field site na shoot naman yung data, I still produced it. So actually, one thing to realize is because ethnography is very holistic, it's about life, where there's all kinds of things going on at the same time. Your data will be beyond, for sure, it will always be beyond your original topic. So one thing you will decide on will be how will you fulfill your original project, and what will you do with everything else which might even be more interesting to you. Sometimes you can just change your topic, sometimes you cannot. So yun, lahat ng yun pag-iisipan mo. And then marami siyang maaring patunguhan. So usually there's a lot more material than you planned for from the experiences.
Yes, Sir Ellie, go ahead.
Dagdagan ko, siguro sa mga sitwasyon dinaanan ko, there are two main points that I always fall back on, no? Pag naharap ako sa ganung klase, lalo na methodologies yan, no? Alam natin na may certain academic rigidity or rules, pero iba rin yung rules sa community ng paggawa ng research. Dalawang bagay, no? Number one, you are in the community mainly as a researcher, okay? Which means dala mo ang ethics mo bilang researcher. Now, when you are in the field, distinguish two items, no? Friendship, you are not there for friendship, but you are there to be friendly. But you are not there for friendship. Those are two different things. You must always be friendly, but that friendliness doesn't translate to submission. Okay. Now, it also leads us to a question of who is the community or what are the communities in a community. Baka naman ang nagsasabi, you also have to differentiate. Let us also not romanticize. Even if we are always pro-community. Marami naman sa atin ganun, no? Pro-community. But let us not romanticize the community. Because if we do romanticize the community, baka may problema rin tayo sa data makukuha natin. Baka hindi na totoo sa community, pero pinoproject pa rin natin silang ganito. What is my point there, no? Ito, lagi ako nagkakaroon ng debate dito, even among academics. While we are pro-community, there are so many, let's admit it, actually based on maraming bagay, no? That there are so many things in the community that are admittedly unjust as well. Maraming unjust values then or unjust practices because the community is not a homogeneous group. The community is a hierarchical group or yung divisions nila horizontal. In short, it is also differentiated. Now, kung may nagsasabi na ito ang gawin mo, tatanong ko sa sarili ko, saan ba nang gagaling yung recommendation na yan? No? Is it from X, Y, and Z? From A, B, C, and D? Ako ilang beses na akong binawalan, Ellie, sinishare namin to sa'yo, pero wag na wag mong isusulat ito. Dahil ito yung mga intriga sa community. So hindi ko nga pwedeng isulat lahat. Sabi ko kahit po walang pangalan, siguro general, wag ka magbabanggit ng pangalan. Pero minsan may historical data, no? Historical data papers, ang dami-dami niyan. Isang local historian, may libro, no? At magsasabi ng pangalan. So pag nasa public document na, yun na yun. So minsan nagtatalo yung local historian at saka yung data sa loob, no? But of course, that's my point, no? Klaro sa akin, nandun ako, not exactly to establish friendships, but if friendships are established, you welcome that, no? But I'm mainly there as a researcher, coming from a certain position, and I'm there to do some negotiations as well in a friendly, ethical manner. And then if I do disagree with their methods, sasabihin ko bakit po ganito ang mas kailangan kong gawin, hindi po yan. Siguro pwede natin yung gawin sa ibang klaseng paraan, pwede rin po natin subukan, pero sa ngayon po mas inclined ako dito. No? Batay sa, pero tingnan po natin, baka mamaya pala mas marami mag-generate yan. No? At maraming pagkakataon na tama sila. No? At may pagkakataon na nag-meet talaga kayo. Ay hindi Eli, wag mong gawin yan. Walang pupunta sa'yo pag ginawa mo yan. No? Gawin mo sa ganitong oras. Pupunta sa'yo, tingnan mo siya. So you weigh in all those things. No? Pero again, friendship is different from friendliness. No? Siguro one issue na ginagamit yung principle na yon, nilapitan ako ng isang taga-community, babae siya, actually sila yung may-ari ng tinitiran ko, na to the point na ang close na ko na sa pamilya nila. No? At sinabi sa akin, Eli, at kilala, yung isa kong respondent na lalaki na katutubo, magkakilala na sila, isa Christian, isa katutubo. Sinabi sa akin ng babae, yung Kristiyano, sabi niya, Eli, pakakasalan ko na ba siya? Wow! Pati ba, nandun ako, hindi, of course, kamotik na akong sumagot ng, oo, bagay na bagay kayo. Pero biglang may nag-trigger sa akin, Eli, ito ay isa ito sa mga bagay na dapat maging klaro. Hindi ka guidance counselor, hindi ka marriage counselor, kahit pabor ka sa relasyon ng dalawa, no? At gusto mong sila magkatuluyan. Umatras ako, sabi ko, sa ganyang bagay, ikaw na magdesisyon. Baka pag sinabi kong oo at may mangyari sa buhay ninyong kasal kayo, ako pa ang may kasalanan. No? Sinabi ko na lang na, gusto ko kayong magkatuluyan, pero wag mo akong paniwalaan. No? Mas paniwalaan mo ang sarili mo. Unang-una, hindi ako marriage counselor, hindi ako guidance counselor ng pag-ibig. Ikaw higit sa lahat ang makakasagot niyan. Gusto ko kayo, pero wag kang maniwala sa akin at wag mo akong consultahin kung magpapakasal kayo o hindi.
Baka gusto kang kuning ninong ng sir, ayaw lang sabihin diretso.
Okay lang yun. Kaya nga lang yung baka pag umuo siya sa kasal at silang nagkuhan, parang aatras na ako, sabihin ko, sa bagay na yan, baka kayong dalawa na lang talaga ang dapat na magdesisyon.
Maganda yung I agree with your point, sir, na yung pag-distinguish ng mga boundaries, kumbaga before going to the field. I think ito yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Sario sa chat ni Ma'am Maria na know yourself better, no? Yung hindi ka basta-basta pumapasok dahil ba pagiging kasi may mga relasyon sa field, sir, right, na hindi mo, kung early on, kung nag-set ka na ng boundary, maganda yun siguro maging break, no, or maging reminder sa'yo when you are encountering this kind of situation.
Yes, siguro dagdag ko rin ng Skilty, no? Minsan hindi mo naman klaro lahat yan, no? May basic principles ka lang and then biglang-biglang may specific. How do I deal with such a specific reality in the field, no? Minsan general principles lang, so baka akala naman iba prepared tayo, no?
Yeah.
Some prepared tayo on a general plane, but some specifics, you encounter those specifics when you are already in the field. Kaya ang ganda sinabi ni Ma'am Sayo, no? Know yourself. Although we can't completely know ourselves before we go to the field, no? Or when we are in the field. No?
Thankfully, meron na tayong participant na gusto rin mag-share. Baka natanong din siya na maging ninang sa si Ma'am Lovewise. How do you Lovewise Shirley de la Cruz?
Yes, sir. Lovewise Shirley de la Cruz po.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead po.
Sir, ang question lang po namin dito from College of Trades and Technology po. Kasi po, bago lang po sa amin yung ethnography kasi po, lahat po kami talaga dito are more on developmental. Then, sa mga topics po na na-discuss noong mga nakaraang araw, which is po, ang daming pumasok na napakagandang idea po para sa extension activities namin. Which is po, ang tanong ko po sana, sir, pwede po namin bang magamit yung data na na-collect namin sa PRRA or yung mga photos po doon or videos po, pwede po ba siyang magamit? Or is it unethical po ba na gamitin siya? Kasi po, pumasok lang po yung idea namin nung na-discuss ni Ma'am Zona, Dr. Zona po, yung tungkol po sa participant observation. Then, ang dami pong mga pwedeng pumasok sa community ng mga research, which is, nandyan na po yung data. But then, when the topic po na-discuss po ay ethical considerations, is it unethical po ba na gamitin namin na nandyan yung existing data? Kasi po, ito pong program namin ay 3 years po siya. Then, kumbaga po, sinatarget namin na may extension, may research, then parang ang dami pong pwedeng pumasok kasi community na po ito ay. Yun lang po siguro sa yung pwede kong maitanong. Thank you po, sir. Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure may mga gustong sabihin si Sir Ellie at si Ma'am Maria, pero may sisingit muna ako saglit, no. Ito nabasa ko lang din naman, pero meron kasing mga steps sa ethical na research na ina-apply. Halimbawa yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Jo na kailangan may pirmahan, no? Like sa university ko ngayon, very clear na dapat may mga ganyang klaseng ano. Pero sa mga cultural nuances kasi natin, halimbawa, di ba, pagpupirma, something na nakakatakot yung gawin for other people kasi meron sila. Ano. So, ang inisip ko lang kasi, ma'am, sa tanong mo, baka ang step na isipin niyo, okay, magkapirmahan na lang tayo para pwedeng gamitin yung data nyo. Baka ganung direction meron ding mga consideration. Pero anyway, I think malinaw naman yung tanong kay Sir Ellie at Ma'am Maria, pero anyone who'd like to share their insight doon sa tanong ni Ma'am Labastilla? Sir Ellie?
Baka si Maria muna? O ako na muna?
Kung naintindihan ko, yung tanong ay kung may extra data which was not covered by your original parang consent. Yun na nga, it depends on the kind of data. Kasi kung halimbawa, it was given to you, kung participant observation, kasi it's very much about your own experiences. So in a way, it's also about your data. It's really your own. Parang who owns the data is actually you. The person who owns the data is the one who experienced it. It's really your narrative of your own experiences. So in a sense, you can use that data and you will just have to think about other considerations. Like ano ba yung mga potential impacts nito sa kanila, etc. So dun mo i-factor in kung dapat mo bang gamitin or dapat bang may identification or maraming ibang ways para walang impact sa participant na tinutukoy. So in a way, it's actually your own data. But if it's like a story that was told to you and the context is clearly parang confidential, so you have to just, it's very case to case kasi pagdating sa ethics. Ano ba yung konteksto ng pagkuha ng data na to? Hindi naman pwedeng pirmahan lagi at saka kahit na pirmado, it's really still not ethical to say, ay may consent ka, binigay mo yung consent. So I don't just throw away the idea of paper and pen, but develop the relationship so that they can always get back to you and you can always get back to them. Pwede mong itanong kung may duda ka, pwede ko ba itong gamitin? Or pwede rin silang mag-follow up sa'yo kasi may naisip sila or hindi nyo na naisip during that moment, but later on, if there's a new context, so baka hindi na dapat i-share in a particular way. So as long as you keep those lines open, yun nga, it's a case-to-case thing. So when do you finish your fieldwork? In a sense, there's no end. It's a lifelong. It's a lifelong.
Idagdag ko doon yan. I agree with that, no? Pero again, just to be safe, double safety lagi. Na safe na yung una, no? Pero kung kakayanin niyo namang bumalik sa kanila and just ask permission, tapos na po namin at meron po kaming mga napiling mga pictures, okay lang po bang isama namin to sa aming research, no? Wala namang masama kung balikan niyo sila kaagad, even by phone, no? Kaya hindi kasi kinakailangan lahat written, no? And then you report that in your research that we have obtained permission for the printing of the photo. Kasi minsan, pag pinublish naman na, yung editor mismo o yung editorial board o yung journal ang hihingi, have you asked permission from those in the picture to have this published? So bago pa umabot yung pagtatanong na yon, baka magandang sagutin na. No? So minsan sa isang research, meron kang maliit na section, ethical considerations, all photos were given permission for blah, 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 blah. No? Mga ganon. It's always safe na, again, contextual. No? Kasi minsan kung klaro na sa matagal mong pag-uusap na tuloy-tuloy pagkuha ng picture at alam niyang ito ay ipapublish mo o kung saan pa man, hindi mo na siguro kailangan balikan. No? So linawin mo talaga ano ba yung mga relasyon na buo mo in that research period. No? Maganda yung sinabi mo, Jessie, in regard, ni Maria, yung hindi lahat kinakailangan nakasulat. Nagkaroon ako ng ganyang experience. Simpleng resibo. No? Sumakay ako sa bangka at nagpapapirma tayo sa gobyerno. No? Meron tayong mga maliliit na forms na papipirma mo kahit na 20 pesos yan, 5 piso, papirma. Dumating ang point, ako ay bibili ka sa tindahan, pagkain at kailangan ng resibo. Okay. Dumating ang point, ako ang napahiya. Nakita ko ang kahinaan ng aking pag-unawa sa maraming bagay. Sumakay ng bangka, tumawid ng isla, bumaba ang mga tao, kasama pa mga assistants ko, magpapapirma ko ng mababang halaga para mapatunayan na yun ang ibinayad ko. Ang tagal nagsulat ng mga isla. And then biglang humarap siya sa akin, hindi ako marunong magsulat. Napahiya ako sa sarili ko. Okay? Hindi dahil ipinapahiya ako ng mga isla. Kundi sinasabi niya, pinaunawa niya sa akin na Ellie, to that effect, no? Ellie, of course, din niya sinasabi, Ellie, anthropologist ka, no? Blah, blah, blah. But the point here is, maraming negosasyon not necessarily written. No? Just i-state lang natin siguro yung mga ganitong klaseng mga dynamics ng ugnayan sa ating research at doon na makikita kung ethical nga ang ating practices o hindi. Kahit sa tindahan, no? Imagine, bibili ka lang ng soft drinks, papipirmahan mo ng gano'n. Nakakapagod. So, gagawa ka na lang ng isang practice na talagang may pagkilala. Of course, may government requirement. Pero, may paraan para harapin ang mga bagay na ito. No? And kung ayaw tanggapin yung mga sinabi natin orally or oral agreement, then so be it. Ako na magbabayad. Kesa pilitin kong papirmahin ang isang taong ayaw pumirma o hindi kinikilala ang ating mga pirmahan. No? So maraming systems ang pwedeng mangyari talaga.
I-insert ko lang quickly, sir, kaya siguro mahalaga yung psikolohiyang Pilipino na methods, no? Yung pakapa-kapa, kasi doon mo maano yung nuances nga ng mga cultural nuances na maaring hindi akma doon sa institutional framework kung saan ka nanggaling and practices. Ma'am Jo, may gusto po kayo i-share?
I-situate ko lang yung question ni Lovely Serlin, no? Kasi usually kasi siya yung coordinator ng extension sa kanyang college, sa kanyang kolehiyo. And they do have extension activities. And when they're doing extension activities, they have already, asked people, pwede ba kami mag-take ng picture sa documentation po? Ito for documentation po, take kami ng picture. Sino yung mga umattend dyan? Lahat ng mga umattend dun sa extension. So, na yan? Nakuha ng picture. Tama, give me a thumbs up, love. Viserlin, tama ba yung Tama ba yung sinasabi ko?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Nagkaroon na sila ng initial research doon. Now, and everything is okay. Now, dahil doon sa narinig niya, na mga input natin, bigla niyang naisip, yung ibang mga nakuha niyang documentation doon sa lahat ng extension activities, pwedeng magamit sa either publication or sa bagong research na nakuha na. Ibig sabihin nakuha na yung mga datos, no. So, ang ko naman is anything that has been given consent, ang aking stance diyan. Anything that has been given consent is okay. Pero I would suggest na gawin mo pa rin yung suggestion ni Ellie, balik ka pa rin doon sa community kasi kilala naman ninyo yung mga tao. Ay, by the way po, yung lahat ng nakolekta namin dito, pictures, etc., pwede po ba namin gamitin sa ganito namang objective? Kasi yung pong una, sa documentation lang po yun ng extension services. Alam niyo naman yung lahat ng nagtatrabaho sa SUC, no? Kukunan lahat ng picture, lahat ng activity, lahat ng mga divisions, at ilalagay yan sa report ng SUC at kuminsan ginagamit yan sa SUC leveling, no? Level 3 ka ba? Level 4 ka ba sa SUC? Ganun yun. Ganun ka-tedious yung documentation ng bawat department. And since gagamitin mo Miss De La Cruz, sa ibang purpose na, hindi na yung basta documentation na extension services wherein, you are the leader dun sa extension services ng college mo, then there's nothing wrong in going back to that community and telling them that you're going to use it for research naman. The same data, no, na nakuha mo. Either pictures o yung mga conversations ninyo o yung mga activities ninyo, that definitely can be used, but there's no harm in going back to the community and informing them. Why do we do this? Because we want to show that we respect them.
Yeah.
And that we are worthy of their trust, that we will never abuse yung mga information na nakuha natin sa kanila plus yung mga documentation natin. Pero mayroong limitation to. Like for example, my research na I've taken pictures of some migrants, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is, pagbabalik ako dun sa Singapore, is a completely different set of migrants na. Kasi nga, temporary sila, nag-expire yung kanilang mga kontrata. Now, how do we deal with these things? Basically, ang sagot diyan sa University of Canterbury, if that is so, di wala ka ng choice, di ba? Kasi you can still use the data kasi after all, they gave you the original consent. Okay? But, you can actually just defend your stance maybe because you will explain na nagbago na yung mga tao occupying, for example, the same organization and the same space, no? Like I remember going back after 1 year, initial 6 months ko sa Kuala Lumpur, going back after 1 year to do another 3 months and then another 3 months the following year. Bawat punta ko ng 3 months nung susunod na succeeding year, iba-iba na yung pamunuan ng Legion of Mary. Legion Mary kasi yung tinutukan ko doon sa Kuala Lumpur. So nagbabago talaga yung face. At hindi na natin control yun. But we still are responsible for informing the participants that of the research na I'm still conducting this research, I am updating my research, at ang mga na-interview ko po nung panahon na yun ay si ganito pa po yung pamunuan. Okay lang ba sa inyo na ipagpatuloy ko yung aking research na kayo naman ngayon yung nasa pamunuan? Tapos pinapapirma ko pa rin sila ng panibagong consent form and then all of that, no? Pero yung mga photos ko sa public spaces, definitely hindi na pwedeng balikan yung lahat ng mga tao. At ang stance naman doon, lahat ng picture na nakuha mo sa public space is good. Okay? Dahil naman yan, pampubliko yan. Nandun ka, kumukuha ka ng picture ng simbahan, nagkataon nandun sila nakatayo, at naman sila, church goer naman sila, walang problema yon. But you do not identify them. Okay? And you do not purposibly show their faces dun sa, kaya nga karamihan ng mga fieldwork photos ko, either naka-side view, likod, o yung hindi identifiable pag hindi ko kilala yung mga participants at wala silang consent sa akin. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you so much po.
Yes, Sir Ellie.
That's a very good point, no? Hindi naman sa lahat ng pagkakataon na photo ay kailangan hingan ng paalam, no? Lalo na kung public space yun, and then wala namang makikilala, no? That's a very good point. Related to that is the idea of when in doubt. Ako lagi, no? When in doubt, no? In spite of the so many consents na ginawa mo na, no? Kung sakasakali lang naabot sa isang puntong kakayanin ko ba talagang kumuha ng consent o hindi na? Or continuing ba yung consent o hindi na? Kung sakaling may isang photo, ang lagi kong tatanungin sa sarili ko, what are the risks of this photo? No? Now, if there are risks, kung meron mang risk ang photo na yan, the risk or the burden of the risk should not be on the respondents. The risk should always be on you. Dahil ikaw ang kailangan may karapatan. At tiyakin mo na kung may risk ito, hindi sila ang tatamaan. Kung may risk ito, preferably wala, no? Kahit kanino. Pero kung talagang may risk involved, the risk should be more on you than on the respondent. Dahil ikaw eventually kailangan managot. At ikaw ang gagawa ng paraan para harapin yung pananagutan doon at hindi ang iyong respondents ang may burden doon. Laging ganun eh. The least risk at the least hurt ang pinakamaliit na, basta ang hindi dapat laging maapektuhan ng risk hanggat maaari ay ang respondents. Kung sakali mang talagang hindi maiwasan ng risk, ang risk na dapat kaya wala rin, pero kung talagang meron, tiyakin mong sa iyo yun. Ikaw ang managot. Ikaw ang may dala-dala. Ikaw ang may dahilan. Kaya nagkaganan yan. Kaya ikaw dapat ang managot ng lahat ng risk. Pero hanggang maaari, pati yun sa iyo, dapat walang risk.
Thank you, Sir Ellie and Ma'am Jo. Maganda yung tanong or concern ni Ma'am Lovewiser din kasi na-emphasize yung key lesson sa ethics na ang consent, hindi one time, big time no, na binibigay, kundi constantly sought after. So baka rin Ma'am Lovewiser Lynn, yung model nyo sa extension is yung co-researcher yung community, no? Hindi na lang source ng data na pwedeng baka i-recalibrate ng ganon. Para yung relationship na sinasabi ni Ma'am Maria is may establish talaga. Hindi lang sila yung kumbaga source niyo or kliyente, kundi sila mismo yung yung sinasabing directions ni Ma'am Saryo naman kanina. Sila yung nagsasabing saan pwedeng pumunta. And meron po tayong isa pang naka-raise hand, tatawagin ko po. Tapos pagkatapos, thank you Ma'am. Pupunta tayo sa part naman ni President Skilty Labastilla ng UGAT para doon sa community-based research. Pero tawagin ko muna I'm not sure kung si Sir or si Ma'am, Melva Lorenzo Parbola.
Yes
Go ahead.
po, sir.
Go ahead, Ma'am.
Yes po. Good morning po, professors. Kanina pa po ito nasa mind ko yung about sa mga pinag-uusapan na po natin about ethics. So, for example po, na nakabigay na ako ng rapport sa participants ko, is it unethical to give gifts? Like for example, pag pumunta ako sa IP or sa fisherman, may dala-dala ako, for example, may dala ako mga tsinelas, mga damit, use clothings, and then foods. Is it unethical? Yun po yung nasa mind ko kasi ay gusto ko pong malaman kung ito ba ay okay lang or hindi. Yun lang po. So far, yun lang muna.
Ang gandang tanong niyan, Ma'am, no? Yung gift giving especially sa context natin. I'm sure na-trigger na yung mga speakers natin. So, sino ang gustong mauna?
Ako muna ngayon.
Go ahead, sir.
Then Maria, ikaw next. No? Maraming pagkakataon magkakaiba. No? Generally, preferably no money involved. Generally, pero kahit yan, nagkaroon na ako ng variation later on. No? Okay. Gift giving is natural. No? Tiyakin lang natin na yung gift giving na yun ay hindi nakaka-apekto sa resulta, no, ng interview, no? Kasi minsan, ganitong amount ng ibibigay ko kasi ganito lang nang pala ibibigay sa akin sinelas. Isang paalam, wala yung kabila. So ito lang bibigay ko. The pointer is, yeah, we value gifts and it's an expression of our gratitude. We can do that, no? And they welcome that actually, no? Sometimes it's not even a question of how big that gift is, no? Ako, nung umalis sa community, I really was surprised, no? In one area, Tagbanwa, binigyan ko lang ng picture, photo namin. And then, bumalik ako after a year or two. Pagpunta ko ron, proud na proud siya, Ellie, ito pa yung photo namin. Pagtingin ko sa photo namin, fade na. Wala na ako nakikitang mukha, yet binavalue yung kuwan. Yung photo, sabi ko, wow, this is an ethnographic experience, something that I haven't experienced before. How they value those gifts. Yung iba naman, iniwan nung alis ako sa isang field, iniwan ko yung mga tasa ko down the line sa buong community, hati-hati sila. No? And then mag-goal sa pagbalik ko after 5 years, Ellie, ito pa yung tasa mo, nakatago. Of course, nila binagan, souvenir na. No? Again, sa ganung bagay, mahalaga yon. May mga instances naman na bibigyan ko ng, kunyari, pinakanta ko ng epic mo, na isang gabi. No? And then, originally, binibigyan ko ng ilang kilo ng bigas. No? And then, yung member mismo ng community ang nagsabi sa akin, Ellie, mga magsasaka yan. Ang dami na nilang bigas. Bakit bibigyan pa ng bigas na binili mo sa bayan? Ang pangit-pangit naman. No? It was good intention, but then the context is not appropriate. Ang nanggagaling ako sa isang context ng akala ko ang ganong klaseng bigas ay malaking bagay sa akin kasi ang mahal-mahal ng bigas. No? But for the community, the bigas is meron na sila. So masisira lang yan. So sabi ko, anong gagawin ko? Ito yung sinasabi siguro kanila Ma'am Saryo. You consult them. Ellie, baka buting ibigay mo na lang sa kanila pera. Hayaan mo na sila ang... Doon nagulat ako ng konti. Kasi never have I done that. No? Pero sabi nila, Ellie, kaysa bumili ka ng bigas, haanin nila. Bibili ka ng ulam, mas masarap pa isda nila. No? Fishing company, dala ka ng isda. Mga ganun. No? So sometimes you just have to trust them.
Yes.
Kahit sometimes it violates some aspects of you, but you see the value of what they suggest to you, and then ganon, no? So una reluctant ako, pero nung kuwan, tinitiyak mo lang na hindi naman talagang parang sweldo type, no? Unless may ibang instances na talagang sa poly-eco naman ay ninako mo ang kanyang oras sa pangisdaan at binigay niya yung oras niya, nawalan siya ng 350, 500 sa isang pangisdaan because of your interview, then nililinaw mo na hindi po ito bayad pero pampalit lang po doon sa pangisdaan ninyong nasira ko. No? Sa ganitong klaseng pagkakataon. Pero hindi po sa lahat ng pagkakataon baka ganito ang mangyari. Mga ganon. No? So, contextual, value systems ng community may not be your own value systems. No? Meron pang isa pa, one last point. No? Isa pang point, sorry. No? May pagkakataon sa isang community, kakain ka, may dala kang bigas, at minsan, buhol ito, no? Nagyayabang ka ng konti. Dala-dala mo brown rice, bilhin mo sa bayan. No? And then brown rice, sabi ko, mahal, ang mura dun eh, no? And then, feeling mo, mahal yan sa Manila. At pag kumain ka ng brown rice, talagang gusto ko that time, no? So, siguro ilang meetings na kami puro brown rice. Kinausap ako ng assistant ko, Kelly, baka naman pwedeng puting bigas naman. Bakit? Sa community na to, puro brown rice na kami. Gusto naman namin makatikim ng puti. So, things like those do have, kumbaga, certain values on food. Sometimes you are not aware, even as an experienced anthropologist. No? Eli, para sa amin, ang brown rice na to ay isang ordinaryong pagkain. Gusto man naman namin makatikim ng, at sa akin pinapasabi na ang bilhin mo naman daw ay puti. To the point, ang point lang na ang lesson doon is, wow, ganito na yung level of trust among us. And I would appreciate that, no? That they can also critique the offering. Isa pang item na lang, sinishare naman ito sa kong estudyante sa Anthro, is isang community sa Kaigorotan, I won't mention the specific community. May isang researcher nagpunta ron, may dalang mga damit, no, na pinaglumaan, iniwan doon. Pero ito naman ang point dito, may iba rin context. Ang sagot ng sinishare sa akin nung member ng community, sabi niya, anong tingin nila sa amin, Ellie? Biktima ng lindol? Nagulat ako ron. Oo nga, no? It was given to them in good faith, of course, no? Natitiwala ka naman doon sa researcher na nagpunta. Kaya nga lang, iba yung value nung natanggap yon, no? Anong tingin nila sa amin? Biktima ng lindol? Hindi kami biktima ng lindol. Bakit kami binigyan ng mga tira-tirang damit? Sabi ko, ang yaman ng karanasan iyon. So may mga ganung value checking kang titingnan, no? Sometimes things that are being given to you, that you are doing in good faith, good intentions, may not necessarily be the kind of values embedded in that gift. No? So, ang dami. No?
Thank you, sir, for sharing. Ma'am Maria, may gusto kayo share?
Okay, so yung problem nga ng money, kasi nga it's really, you don't want to make it a commercial transaction na parang binabayaran mo yung, o binibili mo yung data. But there are many occasions where you can pay for pamasahe or mag-merienda or ikaw na lang yung sa case ko, nahiya din ako. Actually, parang hindi appropriate na magdala ng bigas, pero I brought the ulam. Kasi, tapos good for everybody. Tapos yung isang case, maybe more interesting is, sa Batanes kasi, walang social event na walang inuman. So, actually, the appropriate thing to bring is gin. I didn't know that at first, pero yung first time na makipag-meeting ako, parang special meeting with the Fishermen's Farmers Association, buti na lang may sumama sa akin from Basco. Tapos nagulat ako, biglang naglabas siya ng malaking bote ng gin. Tapos biglang nag-relax yung atmosphere, parang aha, ganun, parang nag-change talaga. And then, so yun yung nangyari. Sometimes people who know what is appropriate, if they are your companions, then they can also be the ones to smooth it over and parang sila yung nag-fill in. Tapos yung photographs, that's actually the best thing to share is something you made yourself. They're sharing with you their fish or their own produce. So yung photographs, I think that's very appropriate. Kahit na malaki yung gastos, actually, nahirapan ako doon. Pero yun yung hinihingi. They want ID pictures, ganun. So I tried to make a way to, kasi film pa noon eh. instead of isa-isang picture, pinag-group shot ko sila tapos ginunting-gunting ko yung ID picture nila. Ganong klase. Malaki kasi yung pangangailangan nila na ID picture. So those are the things that are really appreciated because only you can give it. And also data, like your own work actually, sasabihin ko sa huli, you are actually obliged to give it back. Yung kopya ng sinulat mo, somehow there should be a way for them to access it locally. It's a printed copy. It's hard to decide who to give it to, pero somehow it should be there in the field, not in Manila or somewhere else, pero dun mismo sa community nila. And then, kahit hindi sarili mong research, but it's relevant to them na ikaw lang pala yung nakaka-access nun, information, that's really appreciated also. Like, kahit na yung mga historical materials, mga Blair and Robertson, pag nagkaroon sila ng kopya, yun pala yung impact noon, ginagamit ng mga anak nila sa high school, gano'n. Yung mga sinulat nyo there, they end up being used pala in the school. So one place you can leave it is in the school, sa mga teachers. Pwede rin doon. Recordings ng kanta, kung nag-record kayo, pwede nyo rin ibalik. And photographs. What else? Siguro muna yung sasabihin ko. Tapos kung may pinapabili sa iyo, kasi halimbawa may fisherman nagpabili sa akin ng hook. So yung ginawa ko, imbes na ilang hook lang, nagbumili na ako ng isang box, tapos parang marami akong pinigyan. And it was not expensive kasi parang 9 pesos each lang ganun for me. But I also wondered if it was appropriate later on. Nalaman ko na lang years later na na-appreciate pala nila. Tapos may reputation na yung hook galing sa akin na ano naman din, nakakahuli din. Ganong klase. So if they ask for it, that's a good sign. If you hesitate, it can be later na magpapasalamat kayo kung maisip niyo yung pinaka-appropriate na way. Pwede rin parang goodbye party. Although it depends kung masyadong mahal. pero something like that.
Thank you, Ma'am Maria. Ma'am Jo?
Depende kasi sa lugar, no? Sa kayo kung ano yung perception ng mga tao tungkol sa iyo. Number one, no talaga yung diretsong magbibigay ka ng pera. No, that's totally out of the question. Talagang lahat ng University of Canterbury, UP, bawal talaga yan. Okay? Hindi ka pwedeng magbigay ng pera para lang makakuha ng interview. But yung in-kind, iba't iba yung interpretation niya. Like I remember doing my folklore study with Fras Abaya. So ang topic ng aming folklore thing is food, no? Food. Ang pagpinuntahan namin yung Pook na Guhoy, no? So nagbigay ng iba't ibang assignment, yung para sa marketing, sa iba't ibang aspeto ng food. Ang napunta sa akin yung healing, food and healing. So ang hinanap ko ngayon, yung mga healers, no? Asan yung mga healers ng community at yung nag-interview ko. Anyway, for the whole month, sa summer course yun for the whole month na nag-gather kami ng data, I remember visiting twice and then nang pinoprocess na kami ni Fras Abaya, nagtanong nga ngayon kung ano yung binigay dun sa community. No? Tapos, ako kasi, I am totally ignorant of such things at that time. Sabi ko kay Fras Abaya, wala akong dala kasi yung iba kasi nagdala ng noodles, canned goods. Ako walang dala. And then I remember Fras Abaya jokingly told me, wala akong dala, sabi sa akin. So I felt so guilty that the following, dalawa lang naman kasi yung healers na na-interview ko during that time. Binalikan ko lang ng twice pareho. So ang ginawa ko, the following visit, may dala-dala na ako. Okay. But it came across as a thank you. Kasi sasabi ko kasi patapos na yung fieldwork ko, ito na po yung maraming salamat po sa tulong ninyo, etc. So parang thank you gift now, which is all right, I think. Now, in terms naman sa aking fieldwork sa Christchurch, no, sa among the Filipinos in Christchurch, alam mo na mga Pilipino kung gaano kahirap maging estudyante. Kasi ang concept nila ng pagiging estudyante itong sa Pilipinas na talagang walang-wala kang pera, talagang sakto yung mo, etc. So, some of them felt very sorry for me. Saka, alam din nila kung gaano ka homesick pag nagbibigin ka pa lang ng stay mo sa abroad. So pag nabalitaan nila, okay, pupunta ako sa isang bahay na mag-i-interview ako, yung migrant mismo, maghahanda siya ng kahit na anong Filipino merienda. I remember na may isang bisita pa ako na New Zealand bride siya, and she's really settled sa Christchurch. Siya pa yung nagbigay sa akin ng kanyang binake na pandesal. No? Ibig sabihin, siya yung nagbibigay dun sa interview kasi naawa siya dun sa estudyanteng Pilipino na kasi usually they're trying to be hospitable sa newcomers, etc. etc. So ako yung tumatanggap ng mga regalo. I'm very happy naman na tumanggap kasi sino ba namang aayaw sa pandesal na matagal kang hindi nakatikim ng pandesal from Pilipinas, no? Now, this is completely different from the my experience sa mga migrants of Malaysia and Singapore. Why? When I introduced myself as a student na dito sa University of Canterbury, kasi kailangan magpakilala ka, no? Ethical yan. They look at me as someone na rich. Kasi can you imagine, from New Zealand, I came to Malaysia and Singapore. Paano ito nakaka-afford itong taong ito na pumunta ng Singapore sa New Zealand? So ibig sabihin may pera to, di ba? Yun ang So what I do, kasi nga walang mga bahay yung mga domestic workers, when I interview them sa restaurant, I pay. If we have, halimbawa, merienda, I would pay for the merienda. Masakit sa bulsa, pero sige na lang, oo, kasi importante yon. And then, ang isang striking na sa akin nung Malaysia, Singapore, no, even yung border guard ng Malaysia, hindi siya makapaniwala na may isang Pilipino na tumatawid ng border na on vacation. Hindi kasi ako kumuha ng permit to ng permit to go to Singapore or Malaysia to do research. Talaga lang ako parang migrant ka lang na cross ng border. Now you get 1 month. When you cross the border, you get 1 month. When you cross the border again, you get 1 month in Malaysia. So ganun yung ko. Sabi sa akin ng Malaysian immigration official, you have gone to Singapore 3 times already within the past 6 months. What are you doing there? Sabi ko, I'm on vacation. You are on vacation? Sabi ko, why not? Why not? Can a Filipino not go on vacation for 6 months? Did I violate anything? Tapos, I have to say na wala, no? But I discovered one thing, kung ano yung nangyayari sa ating mga illegal migrants. Kasi he suddenly shifted into a whisper. Ito kasi ang interesting, hindi ko pa ito napapublish, pwede ko i-publish ito yung information. Biglang nag-whisper ngayon yung Malaysian immigration official, sabi niya, if you want, I can help you. Tapos biglang sabi ko, what? I didn't hear you properly kasi biglang atras siya. But these are interesting things in the field work that you discover accidentally, no? Yung na kasi before that, meron na akong na-interview na na ganun yung nangyayari sa kanya. Nagko-cross naman siya. Hindi doon sa Singapore, Malaysia, no? Nagko-cross siya sa Malaysia, Thailand border. At yun ang ina-arrange ng parang mga agency na may connection sa border guards. Papipilahin sila at a certain immigration official, isang linya ito, doon lang kayo, hindi kayo pwedeng pumila sa ibang border. So doon lang kayo, regardless kung ano mangyari dyan kayo pipila. Ganun yung ginawa sa kanila. Kaya nakakabalik sila sa Malaysia for another month. Okay? Eventually, itong migrant na to, bumalik na ng Pilipinas. And her return is even more interesting kasi muntik na siyang maaresto. No? So I did. She called me and she asked me for help. And I did mobilize my connections sa mga NGOs ng Malaysia in terms ng mga migrants. But these are things na na importanteng natin sa ethics na perception. How do your respondents or informants see you? At kung talagang may advantage ka naman sa kanila, then pay for the meal. Kasi yung DW, hindi ka pwedeng ilibre ng yan. Nandun kayo sa coffee shop, ilibre ka ba niya? Diba? Pero yung mga Pilipino sa New Zealand, sila pa yung nagbibigay sa akin. Kaya masaya ako. May pansit sila. Ipagluto nila ako ng pansit. Kasi, homesick na yan. Si Jun, matagal nang wala sa Pilipinas. So, iyaan nila ako. At bibigyan niya ako ng mga pointers kung saan ako pwedeng bumili ng mga Filipino food. Lang po. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Jo. Sabi sa'yo, Ma'am Elva, ang ganda ng tanong mo kasi ang dami na-generate na kwento. But if I may sum up quickly yung sharing ni Sir Eli at Ma'am Maria, yung isa sa key anthropological concept, yung reciprocity, kasi may hiningi tayo sa kanila, sa informants, parang in return, we have to pay back as well. Pero kung ano yung ibibigay natin sa kanila as is context specific, no? Pwedeng pagkain, pwedeng pera, in certain circumstances, pwede rin yung publication. So I'm sure in your capacity dyan sa office niyo, you're able to assess naman kung ano yung appropriate na pwede ibigay sa community. Kay Ma'am Jo naman, yung isa sa magandang point niya is that nagre-reflect yung mga ethnographers sa nangyayari sa field. So hindi lang yung data ang pwedeng i-publish, even yung experience nyo sa field no, pwedeng i-publish as a methodological aspect ng research. So maraming salamat Ma'am Melva, maraming salamat sa mga nag-share. At this point, tawagin po natin yung next natin na trigger, si Sir Skilty, Labastilla, para magbigay ng additional pa ng mga inputs tungkol sa ethics. Go ahead, Sir Skilty.
Hello, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Very rich sharing no, of experiences in ethics in research. Many of the things that I would like to talk about sana na pag-usapan na no, nila Sir Eli, ni Maria, Doc Jo, and everyone. So ang mga may mga konting points na siguro na idadagdag ako. From my experience in doing research, which might be different from some of the things that have been discussed earlier. Kasi my track in anthropology is more on the applied side. No? My background is, of course, I graduated from anthropology in UP, but then I became very interested in the development side as well. So I'm gonna talk about some issues in development anthropology, especially about the involvement of communities, no, yung community-based participatory research or action-oriented research, which can have several nuances na hindi mag-a-apply sa academic research, right? So I'm just gonna quickly share, no, para lang may context tayo of the kinds of research that I do, and then quickly share lang parang some of the researchers that have been involved in the Institute of Philippine Culture, and then we want to talk about some notes or reflections about ethics. So my first job after graduating from UP was in IPC, Institute of Philippine Culture. The director at that time is Mary Racelis. If you know her, she's one of the most respected anthropologists in the Philippines. She's still around. No? She's very strong and lively at 80 plus years old. She teaches in UP and in Ateneo as well. So she was my first boss. So from the get-go, I was already exposed to the. Sorry, medyo natakpan yata yung. Lipat ko lang ha. I was already exposed to engaged research, which has impacts on ethical considerations. Ano yung what will the community gain from any research endeavor? No? So in this particular project, it's I think 2-year project. It's a profiling of the urban poor. Meron na agad collaboration between my institution and the community. No? So we involve, for example, the Urban Poor Associates, an NGO that has been working closely for decades, no, in urban poor communities in Metro Manila. Kasama na agad sila, project director, no, co-director, yung organization working in communities and IPC. And then we involved people from the communities themselves. We went to Payatas in Quezon City and Baseco in Manila. And we got researchers. We trained researchers from the communities. We trained them to help us in research. So ito si Alice, si Kathy. I still remember them. They were one of my first friends in doing research, no? Kasama sila sa pag-survey, pag-interview. So yun agad yung tumatak sa isip ko na research cannot just, be individualistic and mainly coming from the academic side, because communities can be readily involved in research, communities themselves, no? So over the years, ang IPC kasi it's mostly the funding comes from external institutions, although there are also internally funded projects. But we work with different organizations, some of them international organizations, who would need some information, no, about the things that we do. So for example, since yung specialization ko would be on urban informal settlements, no? So may mga projects coming na gagawa from UNICEF, funded by UNICEF or the World Food Program, that would look at the situations of the urban poor in many parts of the country, no? So dahil nga sa ganung klaseng pag-iisip ng IPC na hindi tayo yung, of course tayo yung may training on research, right? Pero hindi ibig sabihin no na tayo lahat gagawa, right? Top-down approach to research, no? And communities will be sources of information and then leave the communities afterwards. No, hindi ganun yung pag-iisip sa training namin. No? So it's really communities are involved from even in the proposal stage, no? Ano po yung meron na agad kaming relationships, no, at the proposal stage pa lang with these different communities, and we always go back to these communities as much as possible, no? Kahit na ibang funder na, we would still continue going back to these communities, no? Kasi alam namin na rich na yung relationship namin, pero hindi ibig sabihin na alam na namin lahat, no? Because as we all know, communities are dynamic, no? They always change. No? Every day there will be new information that you can get. So yun, kasama yung community sa proposal making, sa design ng methodology, no? And up until the very end, no, yung validation of data, the dissemination, as Maria later will tell you, no, in the academic side. But even in this applied research endeavor, bahagi palagi yon, no, na validation of data is part of the process. This one, I know pinag-usapan natin kanina yung ethics in photos, no? And I would want to highlight this picture because this was in Leyte. No? In Leyte, I did, I think, a 1-month field work in a mountainous barangay in Leyte after Haiyan. And the focus was on children, no? Ano yung issues nila, problema nila. So if you notice, no, some of the faces I covered these faces because yung sabi ni Sir Eli kanina, iba yung paalam sa pagkuha ng picture, iba yung paalam sa pag-present, no, in public settings, iba yung paalam sa publication, no? So malinaw sa amin na merong kakausapin namin kada bata, no? Kasi there is pressure, peer pressure, we know that, no? Na parang, of course, pwede ring sabihin na, oh mga bata, okay lang ba na, di ba? Okay lang ba na ipakita yung picture? And most of the time they would say no problem, no? Pero alam namin na peer pressure exists, no? And kung sasabihin ng isa, all of them will say yes na lang kasi sinabi niya. So individually getting consent, no, recorded or written consent from children and their parents. Importante na involved yung parents sa pagbigay ng consent in taking pictures, in getting their pictures taken, or in having the photos presented in public settings or in publications. This particular project, we looked at yun nga, ano yung issues nila after the storm, no? Anong mga kabataan. Ang interesting dito, so we presented after 1 month, I went down to the municipal town hall, present ko yung data, no? And then may mga stakeholders na nag-attend. So syempre ang one of the top issues na lumabas ayun nga yung access to education. Karamihan sa kanila hindi nakatapos ng pag-aaral. Pero surprisingly, the top problem that the children were facing, lumabas no, in many different groups, 7 to 8-year-olds, 9 to 12-year-olds of girls and boys. Ang lumabas na top issue was the lack of toilets, latrines in the community. No? So very surprising. No? So open defecation yung ginagawa ng buong barangay. Now, of course, may pailan-ilan na medyo may kaya, may sariling kubeta. So when I presented that, so yun, after presentation, to the mayor, etc., I went back to Manila. Tapos I think a week later, nag-text sa akin yung suki ko na habal-habal driver. Sabi niya, "Sir, maraming salamat pala sa research ninyo. May kubeta na po ang barangay namin." So imagine that, ganun ka-quick, ganun kabilis yung response. So just because of that process of having the data presented and validated to the community, giving back the information to the community. So nalaman agad yung pinaka-problema. Ito yung, this one is Estero San Miguel in Ligarda, Sampaloc, Manila. Again, dati na naming partner, no, yung community. So in new projects, we would always present to the funders, no, na pwede naming balikan kasi alam na namin yung dynamics, but we also wanted to know more, ano nang buhay nila ngayon. So constant yung partnership with the community, and they are involved in each step, no, of the research process. The kinds of research engagements that applied anthropologists like me do would go beyond our common understanding of research, which is really collecting data and writing. This one, I was the lead person in charge of handling the secretariat work of the National Housing Summit. No? So medyo nakapagtataka, bakit research ba ito? Hindi naman talaga to research. But our networks, no, in housing and in urban poor sectors were crucial, no, in the successful running of the National Housing Summit. Kasi kami yung parang bridge, no, between the government and the communities. We know the issues, so we could bring in some of the experts, no, to help process the proceedings, no, of the National Housing Summit. And then so big whole year-round series of meetings in Congress. Tapos kami yung in charge, no, sa summit na yon. And eventually it resulted in some bills, no. So basically we helped bridge the demands of the community in terms of housing, and help them present these to government, national government, and then of course our work fed into the publication later that was used in drafting bills in Congress, no, in terms of housing, socialized housing, etc. Kalahi Seeds as well, or with the DSWD, halos parang partner na namin yung DSWD in advancing, no, the project of Kalahi Seeds in urban areas. With Consuelo Foundation, ganun din. No? This one, I went to Baguio to track graduates of their program, the practical skills program of Consuelo Foundation. So mga bata, no, children in conflict with the law. So masinsin yung pag-process ng research ethics clearance in Ateneo. So habang gumagalaw yung, alam naman natin yung research boards, no, institutional research boards, medyo matagal yung proseso, ang daming tanong. But in the meantime, dapat umaandar na yung project, no? Kasi meron kang timeline sa project mo. So, pero dahil napadali sa amin because IPC medyo may respect naman yung university sa history and experience of IPC in doing research with children, with marginalized communities. Parang hindi na masyadong binubusisi, no, yung ginagawa ng IPC. So this one still with Consuelo Foundation, no, working with communities to improve the modules, no. So this one is online. This one is recent na online interviews na to, no. So may mga ethics issues din sa pagdating sa online interviews, no. So siguro ano lang, to cap off this sharing, I'm gonna talk about some notes, no, some considerations na pwedeng tingnan. Unang-una, nabanggit na to nila Sir Eli kanina, nila Maria, no, that we need to recognize that there is an imbalance of power between the researcher and the researched. The more we understand that, the more we get to come up with strategies, you know, to lessen that imbalance of power. So may mga strategies na pwedeng gawin that blur the line between researcher and research, no. We've employed arts-based methods, for example, working with children, no. Hindi naman siya traditional research methodology, but of course we understand the context of children in marginalized communities, so we noted that in our methodology. Even in the sampling and recruitment techniques, right? Dapat involved, no? Yun palagi iniisip, paano maging mas mapa-konte, no? Mapaliit yung power relations between the researcher and the researched. Nabanggit kanina yung compensation, no? Given na yun, no? Na when you want people to respond to you through text, or you know, when you require them to attend Zoom meetings or Zoom interviews, dapat magbigay ka ng load, internet load, cellphone load, transportation load, kung kailangan nilang transportation allowance, no, kung kailangan nilang bumiyahe. Sabi natin, di ba, medyo pag-isipan yung pera, right? Yung pera mismo, kasi hindi natin ipapalabas na dapat binabayaran natin yung time nila. But actually, there are cases where compensation, monetary compensation, can happen, especially when you involve people from the community as researchers, no? As research assistants. Hindi pwedeng in kind lang lahat yon, no? Allowance lang lahat. Dapat meron silang whatever you get, no, as a researcher, they should also get some kind of monetary compensation for helping you out, kasi wala silang ibang gagawin, no? Kung research assistant sila, of course they will be working with you throughout the whole process. So dapat lang na masama yung compensation nila sa budget pa lang ng proposal. Yung naalala ko, may nakwento kanina ng mga ethical issues, no? I'm not sure kung sa Mindanao to Jess, may naalala ko na nung nasa UP Mindanao pa ako, may time na nag-request yung isang key informant ng pack of cigarettes as parang token, no, pack of cigarettes. So ikaw syempre gusto mong masaya yung informant mo, pero on the other hand, meron ding ethical issue, yung parang, well, would you want this person to die of cancer later on, di ba? I don't remember how we went around that. Parang nagsuggest yata kami na iba na lang, yung parang hindi nakakasama sa kalusugan mo, but would still be appreciated.
Actually, if I may insert, Sir Skilty,
yes.
if I remember, if yan yung case na yan, kasi yung researcher, sinubmit niya for reimbursement, so nakita nung COA, so na-flag tuloy si researcher coming from a government, kasi hindi pwedeng bumili ng sigarilyo using government money.
Right,
so, right. So diyan, so pag bumili ng gin, pag bumili ng tandag, so yun lang, share lang.
Yes. So yun, no, may mga issues, no, ethical issues pa rin pagdating sa compensation. So ito yung nabanggit kanina ni Sir Eli, no, na pwedeng co-author yung person from the community, no. So karamihan sa mga articles ni Mary, no, yung kasama namin sa IPC, would always have a person from the community as their co-author. And yun nga, isang paraan siya para mapakita na hindi mahalaga yung papel, no, ng tao na source mo ng information. Even in such publications as Rappler, I mean yung platforms as Rappler na kailangan English, no. Hindi sila, most of them would not be comfortable, no, we would not use English as their language, but ikaw yung bahala sa pag-translate, but the information, the analysis, they're part of that, no, they're part of that process. Some other issues, yung 'di ba, kung nag-oo na si president ng PO, dapat mag-oo na lahat ng members ng community, no. So dapat aware ka sa ganong dynamics, no. As Sir Ellie mentioned kanina, na merong hierarchies in communities, and you should always take into consideration those who are in the margins of that community, no, na hindi lang sila nadadala sa pressure. Isang issue din yung limits of confidentiality, no. How confidential will you really be kung halos magkakakilala lahat sa community, no, kahit napalitan mo ng alias yung isang informant mo, pero ikwento mo yung buong buhay niya, no, of course malalaman pa rin kung makikita ng community yung write-up mo. I want to talk a bit about ethics review process. In the Philippine context, alam natin na hindi pa masyadong rich yung understanding ng review boards about the social science context, no, kasi mas health oriented yung research boards ng Pilipinas, no. Biomedical palagi yung approach. Although there are efforts right now, no, the Philippine Social Science Council has been reaching out to social scientists to contribute ano ba yung matatawag na ethical research when it comes to social science research. So yun nga, nabanggit ko kanina na halos limited pa yung understanding ng maraming institutional research boards. At nagka-contribute ito sa pagpapatagal ng proseso, no, kasi maraming tanong na sa atin common sense na pero hindi maintindihan nila kasi iba yung konteksto. May lumabas na pag-aaral si Gideon Lasco and other researchers about ethics clearances in the Philippines, no, and the finding is it's very much an issue of inequity right now, no. It's the IRB processes, institutional review board processes, serve as a barrier for those outside the academe, no. Yung kung wala kang affiliation sa university pero gusto mo mag-research, mahihirapan ka, no. Or yung mga those belonging to institutions or cities without their own accredited IRBs, no, maghahanap pa, magbabayad pa ng pakamahal-mahal na fee para lang mabigyan ng ethics clearance. So yun, no. In the end, it favors those with the resources to do research, no, and research that tend to attract funding. So halos kawawa ka kung hindi swak, no, sa binibigyan ng parating funding ng institutions yung gagawin mong research. Yes, ito yung nabanggit ko kanina, no, yung pressure from leaders of the community. So in a sense, there is a need to really shift the ethical review paradigm toward community interests, no, and expand their review criteria to consider community involvement in the design. Kasi merong, I think may concerns about rigor, no. Why would you give, no, this person from the community without training in ethnography and anthropology as much credence, no, as someone with a PhD, right? So there are concerns about rigor, but I don't think those concerns are founded in especially when you get to know, how these dynamics work in the community, when you're someone with a PhD who works with someone from the community, and you would want that person to be your co-author and help in the design process. Hindi ibig sabihin na, 'di ba, mawawala na ng rigor kasi you're partners in the process, no? And it's actually even empowering the community, no? Na in the end, who knows, no? In the end, kahit wala ka na, alam na nila yung tamang proseso in looking at themselves, no? How do we research about our problems without paying for a consultant outside of our community, right? So yeah, it's really asking how to be non-extractive with our research, and thinking about communities as partners, throughout the whole process. So I think that's all I wanted to share. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Sir Skilty. Maraming puntos ulit na pag-iisipan yung mga participants natin. And Ma'am Maria, do you still have a presentation to make? Okay, sige. I'll call you right away na lang in the interest of time kasi mag-lunch time na pala. Sige. So I'll call on now Dr. Maria Mangahas for disseminating field findings. Sama po ba yung topic?
Anyway, marami nang nasabi, but I'll just share some. Wait lang, where is it? Teka lang. This is the one. So just to share some examples. Wait lang, Chris. Sorry, okay, so I just wanted to share. Where am I? Okay, share lang that, for example, marami namang napag-usapan na dito, like for example, about photos. So this is from I'm the editor kasi of the journal of UGAT. So in answer to one of the questions, this is where you could also publish your final product or also get information that's relevant to indigenous peoples, or there's a discourse going on. So you should look, one of the things you should do as any researcher is to look for the places where publications are talking about relevant information. So Aghamtao is one, yung journal ng UGAT. And this is one example in the current issue, or the one 2019, wherein this is an article about sorcery and rites, and it's very interesting. And you would really ask, may consent kaya? So for example, this is the figure of one of the very important people, and the article says something about why the big difference between the mga tao buhid sa mga lowlanders ay yung pagkakaroon ng damit or not, and it has to do with power. So this photograph is very important or very significant in relation to the points in the article. So nung gusto niyang isama ko, tinanong ko talaga siya, do you have consent? And this person is also not literate, so it's surely not a written consent. So ito yung statement ng author, that it was through an interpreter. And it's really about the whole article, not just to have the photograph taken, but also about the whole the key points that he wants to make in the article. Kasi nga, I thought of sharing with you about Aghamtao. Here are some covers, recent covers ng mga indigenous communities. And I wanted to point to this particular article when it comes to authorship. So for example, this is about traditional ecological knowledge of buloy, which is parang ube, and its value to magbukon aita. So the main author is Dolores Tonko, and this is from her PhD dissertation actually. Pero nung pinublish namin, sabi niya ito lahat yung authors kasi ito yung kanyang supervisor, yung kanyang advisor. And she's actually not an anthropologist, she's a botanist or ethnobotanist. And sa kanilang disiplina, kasama yung advisor sa mga publications kasi malaki rin yung input niya. So the next author is the supervisor of her PhD. And then all these other people, si Eulalio Maliksi, si Miguel Kitain, si Alberto Malunik, Mercedes Cayetano, Josefina Alejo, Berlinda Restum, Emilita Restum, ang dami. These are elders. So parang kanila daw kasi yung indigenous knowledge na yan, yung ecological knowledge. And in their agreement, they are also authors because they parang collaborated to put together this particular research output. Even if they didn't write it, even if it's really Dolores Tonko who wrote it, they are also considered authors, and they are interested in the accuracy of the data, etc. So their names there are actually very important. Talagang nagbibigay din siya ng credibility sa pagiging traditional ecological knowledge ng Buloy, ng content ng article. There's also the whole community behind the article. Kasi nga yun yung parang pinag-usapan talaga na ito yung magiging output. Dapat lahat may credit, hindi lang yung ilang elders, pero actually the whole community. So that's one example of how it might turn out when you finally publish an article in terms of authorship. Ito lang yung first time and only time so far na nangyari ito sa Pang-Aghamtao. So these are other covers of the journal, and I would encourage you, syempre, to browse them. They are available online in the website of the Philippine Social Sciences Council, pssc.org.ph/knowledge archives. Anyway, maybe Jessie can send you the link in the
I
chat.
already shared the link of our website.
Okay, so yung policy namin ay open access, and in each of these issues, you will actually also see a code of ethics. Nakalimutan ko palang ilagay. Sa back page, sa pinaka-back page, may code of ethics dyan. And maybe later I'll look for it to show it. And it says there, or I can try to do it now, but it says there that you should give a copy back of your, I'll look for it later, so I'll show it to you later. Pero yung policy ng Pang-Aghamtao, pag nag-publish kayo dito, we give 2 copies of the journal to every author. And the idea there is that one is for you because you wrote the article, and one is actually for the community. Kung may relevant community, dapat bigyan nyo ng kopya ng Pang-Aghamtao. So yun yung justification kung bakit dalawa. And then you also have a PDF copy. You also have a PDF copy of the You also have a PDF copy.
This is the one, accept? What is that?
Yes. You also have a PDF copy which you can share. So okay. Sorry, nagkakaano yung mga Zooms dito sa bahay ng mga kid at matatanda. Okay, so these are some articles on ethics. Last time there was someone asking about paano kung may NPA. Hindi ako makakita ng article on NPA, but this one is about the militarized zone. Merong NPA din dyan. And then this one is about urban situation, which is actually quite near to the university where the author also works. So mas involved yung kanyang ethical considerations, kasi kung nandyan lang sa kapitbahay mo yung community, ano rin yung, parang he's even arguing that the whole university, the resources of the university can be drawn on for for the needs of your research community, you cannot just not support. Parang ganun. Anyway, you could, I think I shared this article in our module. So it's already in this particular workshop materials. Itong pangatlo is an example of a collaborative research paper. The first author is an archaeologist. The second author is an Ifugao, and he's also the head of an NGO. So these are some. So pagdating sa authorship, mari talagang maging your very main collaborators can also be co-authors. I'm just at random sharing my slides, but I have some more things to say. The other thing is, when you plan your research, so ideally, there should always be something going back to the community. But it's true also that not everybody wants to read a dissertation or a thesis or an academic sounding paper. So ideally, it should be something readable to the community. So it can be, and maybe it should also be in their language. So this is one particular anthropologist's idea that it would be nice to write a children's story. So this is about how she goes to a cooperative work event, si Shella. So yun na nga, maraming maaaring, okay, so I'll get out of my slides first. How do I stop? Okay, and I just wanted to reiterate some points. So ethically, when you do your research, syempre you should do it well, have good methods and protocols, and then write it up, complete it, and do it well. Kasi that's only ethical na gagawin nyo ng maayos. Okay. So your output, usually it can be a book or so-called monograph, which is a detailed written study of a particular subject, in this case, this particular group. Or it can be a shorter paper or article, but there are lots of possibilities nga. So you have been looking at visual things like photographs or films or documentaries. And there are also other kinds of writing na nag-overlap sa academic kinds of publications, which ethnographers have also been looking at. So for example, nagkakaroon din ng blur between journalism and academic feature writing, academic journal output. Magkakaroon din ng blur between autobiography and ethnography, the so-called autoethnography, which is as much about your life as it is about the particular group. Tapos, other things that could have a lot of ethnographic content are travel writing, so yung mga non-fiction writing, and novels, that one is fiction naman. So if some of you are not in the field of anthropology, but your fields are actually English, ang narinig ko, may mga ganun yung mga backgrounds, it does not have to be, the ethnography can be a specific work of nonfiction, and it can even be fiction with ethnographic content. So some of I wasn't able to put slides anymore together, pero some of the very readable, and we can say they are also ethnographies. Yung isa is short stories by H.R. Lonimo about the Bajau, Songs of Salanda. For some people, that's their favorite, one of their parang dapat basahin ng lahat para ma-inspire kayo, but they're actually fictional. So ganun. So marami. Tapos other ways that you might disseminate your research findings can also be other kinds of publications like primers. Kasi nga, hindi naman magagamit sa local area yung mahabang libro. Pero kung, let's say your topic is, in my case, I had a student, her topic was knowledge of fish, ethnoichthyology. So after that, gumawa siya ng primer para parang about the fishes, the different kinds of fishes. Ganun. Something that people were interested in the field to look at, but it didn't have the same expanded discussions that her thesis had. Pwede rin magkaroon ng, did I mention exhibit tungkol sa findings ninyo, let's say in a museum, and don't discount doing it in the field as well. So for validation of your findings, it might be one good way would be to do preliminary dissemination of your findings. It can be in the form of usual form is parang workshop type sa community, pero pwede rin slide showing, parang you share your slides and you share your initial insights. Pwede ring exhibit, lalo na kung may students kayo, so they can set it up, and yun yung nangyayari din sa field schools namin. So then I wanted to just mention that if you ever write naman, in regard to writing, if you do it well, there's always very significant contribution in writing ethnography. Kasi what you're giving is something that's not available. The reason why one justification for doing ethnography is there's nothing there. You can't find a book about your topic. So you have to do the fieldwork kasi wala talagang nakasulat dyan. So therefore, even if it's very descriptive, which all ethnography has to be, dapat descriptive siya, then it's already a contribution kasi there's nothing else aside from that. It will tell you about alternative ways of doing things, of thinking, of being a human being. So that's already significant. Iba pang level yung analysis and interpretation. And if you can only do even just the sincere or parang honest exploratory descriptive work, that's already a significant contribution. Kaya sa Aghamtao, minsan walang framework yung mga articles, pero from the peer reviewer's point of view, there's a contribution here because this is very interesting on its own. So we publish them as well. Okay, so you can think about your ethnography, wala tungkol din sa style. It's not like scientific articles where you may have a parang preset format, may parang introduction, methodology, discussion of findings, ganyan. Sa ethnography, there's also a whole lot more freedom in terms of writing. There's no set style. There's no one single format. So actually, the creative writers like Ellie would probably have more to say. Also, by the way, Ellie is a Palangka Award winning writer. Okay, so what was I going to say? Maraming freedom actually in terms of how you want to disseminate your findings. So, although sa Aghamtao, hindi pa namin nagagawa na mag-publish ng poetry, pero sa conference, nagkaroon na ng time na may nag-present ng poetry, ethnographic writing in the form of poetry. So we might go that way as well. It's not it's possible as well. Some general pointers. At tapos meron din, okay, so maliban dun may mga tungkol sa style, there's a lot of discussion there which I'm interested to investigate in the future. I'm not very knowledgeable also. Pero ngayon, recently kasi, nagkaroon ng mas maraming experimental ethnography because nga there was a questioning of why should there be only one point of view, and parang omnipresent, anonymous, white male actually perspective. So nagkaroon ng maraming experimentation, and then it's become very important now to bring out voices from the field if possible, so you can hear different perspectives, which has also been emphasized in previous discussions in this workshop. So tapos may discussion din tungkol sa So tungkol doon, dapat may statement palagi na ngayon tungkol sa sarili mong positionality. Sino ka ba? Kumbaga, in relation to your topic. So because it can make a difference if you're woman, man, married, etc. Of a different ethnicity, etc. And then there's also another topic is the evocative ethnography, some kind of writing that allows you to feel the way the people feel. It's not just a very parang distanced kind of yung pagkasulat na parang objective scientific, but it's more of this is how it feels, and it's not necessarily that clear cut kasi. So it's also very much about trying to get the reader to understand why it has to be done this way, or experience, to bring out those experiences. I won't go into longer discussion. Baka maganda nga magkaroon muna ng questions, pero I'll just look at some notes that I wanted to bring up. Yung isang point na gusto kong gawin ay pag-isipan ninyo pag magsusulat kayo, where are you and who is your audience? So para maging malinaw, maganda sana na magkaroon din ng idea or sense na we are part of a place where knowledge is being produced. We're part of a place where, so it's knowledge kasi is actually in many ways place-based. Okay, so sorry, there's my kid has to be on a Zoom meeting right now. Wait lang, I'll just try to answer the question.
Okay, while waiting for Dr. Mangahas, how much time do we have pa ba, Ma'am Jo, for the discussion?
We have, ako nga, kayo ang mag-discard niya kung ano yung discussion niya. Kasi anyway, kasama naman yung question. So you still have 25 minutes, no? To 12 noon. Okay. Kasi naka-integrate na kasi yung Q&A, di ba? Nag-i-interact na.
Yep, yeah.
Sige, so I'll time out muna. I have to give a password and figure out the password. Sorry, please excuse me.
Thank you, Ma'am Maria. May blur din ng domestic and professional boundaries. No? But anyway, thank you for your input, Ma'am Maria. And anyone who would like to ask a question or sharing, although in the chat, I'm seeing a lot of concerns like from Daniel, who's here pala, and then Ellie, Dr. Guieb. Siguro a broad question to our speakers, Skilty and Elios here. How do ethical considerations change in terms of indigenous people's research? Kasi yun yung concern ng CNSC. May mga big changes ba or the principles are fundamentally the same? Sir Ellie?
Okay, yeah. I don't know kung saan pwede kong tingnan. No? Ang dami. Pero gusto kong pasukin siguro. Yung iba kasi common. No? Institutional permission ba? Or sapat na ba yung community permission na hindi dumadaan sa bigger institutional permission? No? Those are some of the major concerns now, particularly that you can't go into communities without, let's say, getting the consent of bigger institutions. Pero mga issues yan na pwede nating harapin. No? Pero ang isang gusto kong tingnan, ang ganda ng binanggit ni Maria, no? Yung even on the issue of the text itself, there are now issues. Okay? An example of this is, for instance, nung gumagawa at halimbawa when we talk about oral literature or let's say epics, for instance, no? Pag nagdo-document tayo niyan at ang karamihan sa mga tekstong nababasa natin, I think 95% o baka 100% pa ganito pa ang style, no? Ay pag nagbasa tayo ng epiko o ng anumang maiksing recording, kahit na maiksi lang, kahit 4 paragraphs yan or 4 sentences, no? Ay pag binasa natin yung isang teksto, ay parang siya na ang teksto, buo na. No? Okay? Ang narinig natin yung kumanta. Okay? Pinoproblematize na ito sa literature. No? Okay? And I think dapat din pinoproblema natin ethically sa anthro. Kasi kaninong boses yung narinig? Yes, ang totoong may boses na yung kumanta. Pero minsan tinatanong natin is, paanong nabuo yung teksto, no? Yung pagkanta. Pag nasa field ka, doon mo ma-realize, no? Pag binasa mo, bakit parang inconsistent, hindi mo marinig saan gagaling. Pero pag nasa field ka, doon mo ma-realize na minsan, yung kanta ng isang katutubo ay in response to those who are around him or her. No? Kaya minsan ay, kaya pala yun yung kasunod na kanta o kasunod na laman ng kanta ay dahil may nagtanong, no? In the field, no? Hindi yan ang magandang episode na kasunod. Ang gusto ko ito. Okay? So, that dialogue is missing in the text, in the form of the ethnographic text. And it is, I would say, a disruption of certain texts. So, ang isang lumalabas ngayon na possibility on reforming no, the text is, baka hindi na sapat yung isang column. Baka dapat minsan 3 columns, no? The text of the main singer and the texts of those coming into the picture. Let's say, blah, 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 kumakanta, and then open space yung kanyang column, meron ditong isa na, hindi yan ang gusto kong episode, papuntahin mo na kaagad sa kasal, no? And then may sumisingit na isa, no, wag yung kasal, yung munang ligawan. Then biglang magde-decide yung singer, ligawan ang kanyang ginawa, no? So minsan magtataka ka, bakit pag dinocument ng anthropologist, isang diretsong teksto, but in real ethnography, hindi diretso yung teksto. So isang argument na pinopost ngayon, there is an issue even in the textual formation of the epic. Baka dapat ang bagong ethics ng pagsulat ng epiko, at pinag-aaralan to talaga sa literature, no, ay multiple points to have an understanding of the field work of the epic, no? So that is also an ethical issue, no? Na ngayon pa lang talaga natin kino-confront. Ako naman, as I would say a filmmaker, as a broadcaster, dati ang ginagamit ko lang na mic, at merong technical consideration, no? Dati ang ginagamit ko lang na microphone, yung unidirectional, para clear ang pag-record ko, no? Diretso do sa singer. Pero given that changing perspective about recording, because yung dating unidirectional microphone ko ay naging omnidirectional para ma-pick up yung comments ng mga nakikisawsaw. Let's put it that way, no? Yung mga sumasali sa pagbubuo ng epiko. Okay? So these are now new dimensions of the ethics formation of a text, no? Na may kaugnayan sa nabanggit ni Kwan kanina ni Maria, no? Even the form itself may vary. Not because that's what you want, but because that's what the ethnography would demand you to do right now. I don't know kung nasagot ko yung tanong.
Thank you, sir. Baka another round of seminar workshop yung ethnographic writing, kasi that's, as you have said, an entirely different demand, no, from the ethnographic research. Anyone else would like to raise some points or ask questions or bring up concerns? Mukhang gutom na yung mga participants natin. Ako rin actually. All right. Sige, last few words na lang from our speaker to conclude this module about ethics na lang siguro. I'm not sure if Skilty is still here or baka may mga domestic concerns din siya, but let's have it first from Maria, and then Skilty, and then lastly si Sir Ed.
Maria, go first. I think may sasabihin ka pa kanina.
Yeah. Go ahead, Maria.
I covered it na. I'm sorry. Sa pseudonyms, there's actually a debate over whether you should hide identities or reveal identities. Kasi I talked to this anthropologist, sabi niya, he really wanted to name his informants kasi that's their only acknowledgement. Why should they be why should they be anonymized? So, and it's their perspective. So, para sa kanya, mas ethical na hindi itago yung pangalan. But I think in most thesis panels, gusto nilang anonymize yung mga tao sa community. But you might want to argue that this person's particular voice should be given recognition. And in the case of that anthropologist, sabi niya, tingnan niyo yun, after the next year, namatay na yung informant niya or something, na massacre siya. So parang this was his only chance to be acknowledged as as an individual, not just a generic person representing his group, but also as an individual. So ganun. The other thing is language. I don't know. Usually we write in English kasi, so it's important to consider how to return. But if you write in English, it's also okay to return the English version to the community. May problema din yung who is the community or where is the community, but at least in situ may place an individual or a school or somewhere na nandun din siya. But then UGAT ethics guidelines say dapat, ay nilagay ko siya sa chat box. It says here, the anthropologist should be scientifically objective and relevant to national and community goals. But Rosario was saying dapat daw i-update na ito. Anyway, dapat daw sincere, obliged to explain objectives and implications, listen to criticism. And the last phrase, eventually to provide a copy of his work, ideally in their language. And the final arbiter daw is the host community. So this one is actually the hardest kasi kung hindi naman tayo din experts sa local language, how can we accomplish this? So another alternative is to produce something that's in a more popular language like Filipino or in a non-academic sounding language. Basta lang ma-access. I also wanted to emphasize, gusto nyo bang mag-publish sa local or international? Kasi sa international, mas may points sa promotion, etc. I think usually. But actually, if you publish locally, like in your local journal, or there is also a possibility that you can get the validation kasi mas alam nila yung local situation. So it's not necessarily better na international lagi. In fact, baka mas walang alam yung sa ibang bansa. Maybe theoretically they can give you input, but there might be other aspects where it's also good to publish locally. For example, why would you publish an article in Filipino in an international journal? Talagang that doesn't make sense, di ba? Ano pa yung sasabihin ko? Anyway, yun na lang siguro. Thank you very much and I apologize for disruptions.
Thank you, Dr. Mangahas. Prof. Labastilla?
Yes, yeah, I agree with many of the points that Maria raised, especially about yung positionality kanina. Dapat no malinaw sa iyo, why are you doing this research? Who benefits from this, right? And then I think yung point about language, if I can relate it to yung community based participatory research, halos parang extension na lang siya. Now, kung meron kang someone from your team, no, that's really from the community, 'di ba? Parang okay, they can readily translate the work no to the community kasi part sila ng project itself. And then siguro lastly, I just wanted to inform everyone no, that the CNSC or UCAN is now actually an institutional member of UGAT. No? So we would very much like for us to continue engaging with each other no? In the future because you're actually the only, I think right now you're the only institutional member of UGAT. So I hope I'm sure Doc Joe has plans for our future engagements, but please please do not think that this is just a one-off thing because you're in it already. You're part of UGAT. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sir Skilty.
Yeah.
Doc Ellie?
I don't know. Yeah, this only perhaps the start of so many dialogue, no, engagements with UCAN or CNSC. Yeah. Okay. Siguro just a final note about ethnography or the ethics of doing ethnography. It all boils down to our values as humans, no? When we do this kind of research, or kahit ano pang research yan, pang-academe man yan, or yung tinatawag nga natin community, for the community, or by the community, marami yan, no? We always go back to the question of why are we doing this, no? And why are we employing this methodology, ethnography in particular, no? Perhaps ang tatanungin talaga natin sarili natin, why this style over other styles, no? Why this method over other methods? And on top of that, why these values coming out of this method and not those other values coming out from other methods, no? At patitibayan natin yung mga values na kinikreate ng ganitong klaseng engagement with the community. Napakahalaga no? Pagkilala sa values na pwede nating panghawakan, kapwa, no? Sa kapwa at pwede lang panghawakan para sa iyo, yung community na kausap natin. Kasi eventually, ang ethnography is not you writing about them, but also that's only partly about it. No? It's mainly about them. And at sila ang dahilan kaya ka nandoon. No? So, ito siguro ang pwede ko munang paraan ng pagtatapos ng ating talakayan, no? sa ethics ng ethnography.
Muli, maraming salamat Dr. Maria Mangahas, Dr. Guieb, and Professor Skilty Labastilla for delivering this module on ethics. I'll hand over to the CNSC about closing this program. Maraming salamat po.
Yeah, Dr. Jocelyn, just a brief,
Yes,
a brief interruption before we play the videotaped message of the new president of the CNSC. We are in transition to a new leadership. So far, there's a holdover order for all the designated officials to remain in their posts. And I informed him about this ongoing, capacity building among the faculty. And I invited him to give a message. And that's why medyo nahuli lang kanina kasi nawalan tayo ng oras. Kasi sabi ko, i-continue na muna yung discussion. Tingnan natin kung ano. Kasi bago na lang yung certificate of commendation, we will show the videotape, message of the new president of CNSC. So, Doc Jocelyn, you are in charge of introducing.
Thank you, ma'am. So once again po, maraming salamat sa mga bagong kaalaman at mga practical na karanasan po na binahagi sa atin ng ating mga resource persons ngayong umaga. So we at CNSC are indeed grateful for your selfless sharing of your expertise. So at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now listen to the message to be given by our college president, Dr. Marlo M. De La Cruz.
Warm greetings to all of you engaged in this webinar. First of all, I would like to commend the Office of the Vice President for Research and Extension, under the leadership of Dr. Josefina Tondo, together with her team and also our partner today in this significant undertaking, the Ugnayang Pang-Aghamtao Incorporated, known as UGAT, and the pool of experts of ethnography for conceptualizing this seminar for Camarines Norte State College. Ethnographic fieldwork was developed originally by anthropologists to conduct an in-depth study of a society, culture, or group. Participant observation enables researchers to share the experience of their subjects. We live in a world filled with people from different walks of life and people with different cultures. This is where ethnographic research comes in with so much value. Through the use of ethnographic principles and tools, we gain better ways of describing and understanding another way of life from the perspective of people having such culture. We are exposed to see people see their own worlds. Hence, we are provided with a real-world data as we see the reality of social interactions that reveal answers to various questions, shaping the kind of life that people live. The findings in ethnographic research can be very useful in personal adaptation, personal success, and in the social development of any culture that we encounter. There is much to learn from the resource speakers on how to do ethnography. You will surely acquire new knowledge and skills so that your research and extension endeavors would make you become more relevant, meaningful, and effective catalyst in personal and societal change of the communities we serve. God bless all of you as you continue to find ways on how to create opportunities for change and development in our midst. Thank you and good morning.
The president, that's why he videotaped the message, is because he's actually visiting the 6 campuses, no? Starting with 2 campuses this morning, 1 campus para this morning. I was supposed to be with him as one of the VPs, but I excused myself from the campus visitation, mainly because meron nga tayong activity, no? So I will be joining later. Thank you.
Thank you very much po, ma'am. And thank you very much to our college president, Dr. Marlo de la Cruz. So we shall now have the awarding of the certificate of commendation to all our resource persons for this morning. So allow me to read the citation. Camarines Norte State College awards the certificate of commendation to Sir Guieb III in grateful recognition of his distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource person during the Doing Ethnography seminar workshop held on August 2, 2021, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the event. Given the second day of August 2021 via Zoom platform, signed by the college president, Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz. Thank you very much, sir. Same certificate of commendation is given to Sir Jessie G. Varquez Jr. in grateful recognition of his distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource person during the Doing Ethnography webinar workshop held on August 2, 2021, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the event, given the second day of August 2021 via Zoom platform, signed by the college president, Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz. Another certificate of commendation is awarded to Dr. Maria F. Mangahas in grateful recognition of her distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource person during the Doing Ethnography webinar workshop held on August 2, 2021, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the event, given the second day of August 2021 via Zoom platform, signed by the college president, Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz. We also want to award the certificate of commendation to Sir Skilty Labastilla in grateful recognition of his distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource person during the Doing Ethnography seminar workshop held on August 2, 2021, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the event, given the second day of August 2021 via Zoom platform, signed by Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz, College President. So once again po, thank you very much. And we also want to award this certificate of commendation to Ma'am Rosario Bona de Santos del Rosario in grateful recognition of her distinguished and invaluable service rendered as resource person during the Doing Ethnography seminar workshop held on August 2, 2021, thereby contributing immeasurably to the prestige and success of the event, given the second day of August 2021 via Zoom platform, signed by the college president, Dr. Marlo M. de la Cruz. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng ating mga resource persons. So once again, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you, go ahead, Dr. Jessie. Nakala ko kasi tapos ka na.
I'll just be announcing on the photo documentation
Okay, go
later.
ahead.
So before we end po, we are now inviting all our participants to please turn on your video for our photo documentation before we have this lunch break.
Again. Okay, got it. Okay na, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much po.
Thank you po. Salamat. Bye-bye.
Salamat.
As I thank Ellie, Maria, Jessie, and Skilty, please consider part 2.
Thank you so much.
Maraming salamat. And I know that we have learned a lot. Maraming na anong mga issues na pwede panghimayin. And we look forward to a great collaboration with UGAT. Totoo yung sabi ni Skilty na tayo yung una, tayo mga taga CNSC ang una sa institutional member ng UGAT. And we plan to really make sure that our faculty members are capacitated in terms of anthropological research methods. Maraming salamat uli. Malaking utang na loob ito, guys. Saka na lang yung pamerienda ko pag nagkita-kita tayo. pag wala ng COVID. Pero I got vaccinated na kaya I have better hope for travel this time. Sige. Maraming salamat. And we will have the session by Ami Rara this afternoon for material culture, which promises to be a very interesting and then topic pa rin. And I hope some of you guys can still join us. This afternoon, yung si Ellie, si Maria, saka si Skilty, si Jessie, no? If you can join us. Daniel was very active sa chat. We were chatting sa, kasi because of my research in Malaysia. And thank you, Daniel. Ami Rara is still in. I saw former press.
May mic, narinig ba ako dyan? Okay lang?
Naririnig ka, Ami.
Kasi baka mamaya wala akong sound.
Anyway, she will be leading our discussion this afternoon, and all the best to all of us. Last leg ng ating partnership. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a good lunch. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye bye.